Subaru Natsuki, an average commoner in Japan, faces the most incredible plot twist in his life when he's suddenly transported to another world. It all happened late at night one day as Subaru stepped out to get groceries in the convenience store. After getting all he needs from the store, he walks outside to get back home. Before he gets far, Subaru gets a weird feeling of some supernatural force around him. He ignores the signs and preps himself to cross the street. Just as he steps forward, his eyes begin to itch. He rubs his eyes with his hands only to open them and find himself in another world entirely. The day in that world was bright and filled with people in medieval clothing. Subaru takes a few moments to absorb his new reality as he stands near a fountain staring into the environment in front of him. It was then that it dawned on him that he'd just been summoned into another world. Subaru eventually accepts his fate and keeps walking. Meanwhile, a lady who's somewhere around the city runs frantically on the building rooftops holding a weird heirloom and smiling. Subaru, on the other hand, begins to think about the endless possibilities and upgrades his body may have had during the teleportation. At some point, he begins to think he has magic as that's a usual perk with those who are transported to another world. He even tries testing it on an accident that's about to happen in front of him. Unfortunately, he finds out the hard way that he doesn't have magic. Subaru continues his journey through the city to find a place to stay. On his way, he finds a stall and tries buying some fruits with his old currency. The stall owner chases him out after seeing his old currency and Subaru continues moving. He also tries interacting with other people in the city but he gets shunned every damn time. When he gets tired of all the stress, Subaru sits in an alleyway to think about his situation. He takes out his phone and finds out it still works in the world he's in. Frustrated, he puts his phone back into his pocket and begins complaining about his terrible odds. He wonders where the beautiful maiden who summoned him into another world was. Just then, 3 muggers find him sitting alone in the alleyway and hold him up to rob him. Before they can do anything, the lady running on rooftops passes by and greets them before going her way. When she's gone, Subaru tries to test his newfound strength. Unfortunately for him, the muggers had a knife on them. On seeing the knife, Subaru apologizes for punching them and gets beaten up harshly. While receiving his beating, a beautiful lady stops by to ask them about her stolen heirloom. The muggers ask her if she was there to save the kid, but she says she isn't. Then, they tell her about the rooftop lady who passed by earlier and nudge her in the right direction. The lady, after getting the information she needs, the beautiful lady saves Subaru with her spirit magic. When the muggers are gone, the lady asks Subaru about the location of her insignia heirloom. Subaru tells her he knows nothing about such a thing and then faints shortly. The lady and her pet talking cat contemplate leaving Subaru to die there, but they eventually end up helping him. A few moments later, Subaru wakes up on the lap of the pet cat and throws a fuss over it. The lady asks him to pay her back for rescuing him by telling her the location of her insignia. Subaru gives her more information about the rooftop lady and calls it quits. The lady thanks him for the help and considers it repaid. She takes her leave, but Subaru follows her out of the alley. Now on the street, he convinces her to let him accompany her on her quest to find the thief who stole her heirloom. The lady accepts his request and leads the way forward. Over the next few scenes, Subaru and the lady ask every stall owner in town for the whereabouts of the insignia thief. A few hours later, the duo settled down for a break on the balcony of a building. There, they introduce each other formally. The beautiful lady introduces herself as Sadala and Subaru calls himself Subaru. After hearing his name, Sadala gets the feeling that Subaru is from a noble family. She feels his hands and confirms her suspicions. After their break, they continue their search. At one point, they find a little girl with green hair looking lost and confused in the middle of town. Subaru and Sadala argue over whether they're to help the little girl or not. Sadala ends up walking over to the little girl to ask a few questions. However, the girl starts crying loudly. Subaru walks in and pulls a coin magic trick, making the girl smile. Then, they take her around town to find her mother. Thankfully, they didn't have to go far as the little girl was reunited with her mother. Later on, the duo settle down by a bridge to talk about their progress. Subaru argues with Sadala again about good deeds and the like. Sadala concludes that Subaru is someone who likes wasting his life on useless things. She then tells him about her nature as a half-elf, half-human. Still, Subaru compliments her beauty. Sadala gets visibly touched and shies away from the embarrassment. Eventually, Subaru takes them back to their main quest. They get to their next poi, which is a merchant somewhere around town. There, Subaru tries to bribe the merchant to spill some information, but he soon finds out that both of them are broke, so he dismisses them. Before they leave, the little girl they helped earlier arrives with her mother to see their father, the merchant they are asking for information. After hearing about the help they rendered to his family, the merchant apologizes and offers his help to them. Hours later, by evening time, Subaru and his new Ice-Sky girlfriend, Sadala, walk the abandoned slums of town, scared of every alleyway and corner they pass by. At one point, Sadala complains to Subaru that she's already out of time and must return the insignia before nightfall. Puck, the pet talking cat, also decides to call it a day as it is dark already. Sadala greets her goodbye and watches her disappear into thin air. Now alone with Subaru, Sadala makes it known that he shouldn't be getting any ideas at all. She tells him about lesser spirits like Puck that take time to fully develop into an original spirit, and proceeds to light herself up to glow like the stars in the sky. Moving on, Subaru and Sadala keep walking towards a particular direction. They find a passerby moments later and ask him about Felt, the lady they were looking for. The person tells them about the notorious Felt and tells them to be prepared to negotiate their stuff back. Subaru and Sadala keep moving forward, arguing like two people in love before considering working together to keep them safe. Subaru takes the first watch and lets Sadala sleep. After Sadala is away, Subaru takes a tour around the house they're in. There, he finds various eerie stuff lurking around there. Subaru walks a little further into the house and finds a freshly mutilated body lying on the floor with blood everywhere. Before he gets to take in all the horror, a lady speaks behind him and pushes him to the floor. Subaru gets up quickly, barfs and collapses. Sadala walks into the room to find out what's wrong with Subaru. Unfortunately for her, she gets hit in the head before she realizes what's going on. Subaru holds her hand and tries to keep himself alive so he can save both of them. However, his body gave out way too quickly. Almost immediately, Subaru wakes up to see the merchant from earlier asking him to buy some of the apples in his hands. Subaru gets confused and tells the merchant he's broke beyond comparison. The merchant throws him out and Subaru gets back to the streets. He tries to remember his life before then and remembers Sadala and her pet talking cat, Puck. He also checks the wound on his belly and finds out it's already gone. Confused, Subaru rushes through a familiar alleyway and finds the three muggers from the previous day waiting there for him. Tired of facing the same troubles again, Subaru tricks them into believing he is powerless. When they let their guards down, he beats the living shit out of them and continues searching for Sadala. He gets back to the abandoned slums from earlier and finds the building they stayed in the previous night. He bangs the door and finds out the inhabitant is none other than the dead body he found the previous night. Subaru gets even more confused and asks the old man if he's ever died before. The old man laughs and tells him he's never closed his eyes to death before. Subaru then asks him about Sadala and the insignia. However, the old man tells him he knows nothing about such. He then tells Subaru about a shipment of loot he's receiving later that day and tells Subaru to stay behind to check whether or not his insignia is there. Subaru asks him about Felt, the weird young lady, and the old man still tells him he knows nothing about her. The old man then asks for some payment and Subaru gives him some potato chips from the previous world he was in. Subaru waits outside the house for Felt to arrive. When she does, he talks to her about the insignia and takes her inside. While inside the house, Felt and the old man argue with each other over spoiled milk and all that. The trio get to tease each other for a few minutes before Felt talks business. She drops a precious heirloom and asks Subaru to pay for the jewel inside it. Subaru tells her he doesn't have any money on him but he could trade his cell phone for the heirloom. Felt and the old man ask him about the phone in his hand and Subaru takes a picture of them. When asked what that was, Subaru lies and tells them the device had magic that could freeze any moment in time and then store it. This fools the old man and Felt well enough for them to ask for the phone's worth. Again, Subaru tells them it's probably worth 20 holy coins. The old man and Felt believe his lie but then tell him about a former client of theirs who wanted the heirloom insignia for 10 holy coins. To avoid breaching their contract, Subaru would have to follow them to the point of negotiation and legally buy the insignia from them. As they discuss their terms and conditions, someone knocks on the door and Felt gets up to answer it. Minutes later, she returns inside with her client. The client, who is a familiar lady, weirdly spooks Subaru, almost like he's seen her before. Still, he calms down and openly negotiates the insignia with her over some drinks. Subaru shows her the item he's putting up for sale and tells her the worth. The lady reveals her identity to them. It turns out she's just a proxy representing her real client. As such, she's prepared to increase the price for the insignia to 20 holy coins if they're ready to sell it to her that instant. Subaru caves in defeat but the old man tells him he's still getting the insignia since his phone is probably worth more than 20 holy coins. The negotiation ends quickly with Elsa, the proxy, getting the short end of the stick. She gets up to take her leave and asks Subaru what he's going to do with the insignia. Dummy Subaru blatantly tells her he'll return it to the owner. Elsa realizes Subaru and the other two may be part of her enemy so she attacks the three of them. The old man steps in to protect his people but unfortunately ends up losing his life. When she's done with old man Rom, Elsa prepares to take her leave. Felt, however, accuses her of being a psychopath and launches herself towards her. Sadly, Elsa read her movements perfectly, aiming for the opening, and killed her. Subaru goes out of control and blindly attacks her. Elsa pushes him away and goes in for the attack. Although Subaru dodges the fatal part of the attack, he still gets ghastly injured in the belly. He collapses and closes his eyes to death only to find himself reincarnated to that same day. This time, he faints for a few hours and wakes up near the merchant's stall. The merchant gives him some apples, but as he's about to take it, he spots Sadala walking along the street. He rushes towards her and tries to explain himself to her, but Sadala doesn't know him anymore. Subaru then makes a big mistake by calling her the Witch of Envy, just like Felt had advised him to do. Hearing him call her that, Sadala gets really pissed and warns him never to call her that again. As she prepares to head out, Felt, who's been hiding in a corner all this while, approaches Sadala and steals her insignia. Sadala immediately chases after Felt, despite Subaru's warnings. Subaru follows the two girls and runs into the same alleyway again. Just as he's about to leave, he finds the three muggers from the previous days waiting for him. He gets super pissed at them and just walks right past them. Sadly for him, one of the muggers stabbed his back. Subaru falls to the ground bleeding profusely as the three muggers argue and bicker at one another for making such a mistake. Eventually, the muggers leave poor Subaru lying on the ground and run away to avoid getting caught. Subaru passes on that instant and is reborn right in front of the merchant's store again. The merchant hands him an apple and asks for him to buy it, just like he always does, but Subaru refuses to buy it. Instead, he gets to the back of the store to check for his stuff. He finds his back wound gone already and decides to try a different approach this time. He accepts the fact that he's been in a time leap all this while and hopes minding his business would prevent such bad things from happening to him. So he plans his life perfectly this time. All he has to do is become an inventor using his knowledge from his past world and make enough money to live a luxurious life. He then asks the merchant for his thoughts about his plan, but the merchant chooses to refrain from Subaru's problems. Fair enough. Subaru hits the streets of the town and experiences a very weird deja vu act playing out in front of him. He finds two people holding a lost little girl to find her mother. This makes him suddenly remember the little girl he and Sadala saved in the previous time loop. Subaru understands that he's destined to meet Sadala one way or the other, so he cuts his selfish plan and returns to the merchant. There, he asks the merchant about the pickpocketing occurrences in the town. The merchant tells him about one that happened not too long ago. He points Subaru towards the magic attack marks on the walls nearby and gives him a few more pointers towards the right direction in his investigation. Subaru thanks him and continues into the streets thinking about meeting Sadala and getting her insignia. Sadly for him, he runs into the three muggers in the alleyway again. This time, he shouts at the top of his voice, calling for help in any way he can. The three muggers call his bluff at first but are soon caught with their tail between their legs as the sword saint, Reinhard, arrives on the scene to protect Subaru. The muggers recognize him as bad news immediately and scram for dear life. After they're gone, Subaru thanks Reinhard for saving him. Reinhard tells him it's nothing and just urges him to live life and keep out of trouble. Subaru notices his uniform and asks about his guard uniform. Reinhard tells him he's off duty for that day. The two talk about a few more random things until Subaru makes one final request. He asks Reinhard to tell Sadala, whom he described perfectly, to avoid the looted house in any way she can. Reinhard nods in agreement and lets Subaru go. That evening, Subaru gets himself to the slums and asks around for Felt's den. After getting directed towards the right direction, he heads to the place. On his way there, however, he bumps into the worst person he could ever see, the Bowel Hunter, aka Elsa, the person who's been killing him throughout his time. Elsa shows him her usual psychotic side and teases him a little bit before leaving. Subaru heaves a sigh of relief and keeps walking towards Felt's den. When he gets there, he checks around hoping to see Felt. What he didn't know was that Felt was already behind him. When he did, it was already too late as Felt had already mistaken him for an intruder. She fights him for a little while before stopping to verify his identity. Subaru tells her he's there to trade his Mesha, aka cell phone, for the insignia she's to sell to a particular Elsa. Felt stops fighting him and takes a look at the Mesha Subaru wanted to trade for the insignia. Subaru tries to get her to trade the insignia for the phone at that instant, but Felt would rather have her old man, Rom, check the phone before she makes a deal. Subaru wastes no time as he rushes towards Rom's house so the deal can be done as quickly as possible. On their way there, Subaru gets very sentimental with Felt and gets bitten by the frustrated young girl. After getting there, Rom checks the Mesha and rates the phone higher than most holy items he's seen. Subaru gets very happy and believes the negotiations have ended right there. However, Felt was suspicious about some things as she tells him to stop so she can ask him some questions and all. Subaru stops and begs her to trust him. He fears the assassin, Elsa, will soon arrive to take them all out. Felt, however, refuses to trust his excuses even with all the begging and bowing. Eventually, the dreadful knock on the door is heard and Felt goes to answer it. Subaru begs her not to open it, but she does so eventually and finds Sadala on the other side. Sadala sees herself into Rom's house and threatens Felt to return her insignia so no harm comes to her. Felt takes some steps back and refuses to give her insignia. Instead, she talks a little about Subaru wanting to return her insignia to her, which surprises Sadala herself. She admits to never knowing a thing about Subaru or even meeting him in real life before. She then continues talking to Felt about her insignia, and fails to realize the assassin creeping up close behind her. Thankfully, Subaru notices in time to inform Puck, her pet talking cat, to block Elsa's attack. After her first failed attack, Elsa shows herself and promises to slaughter everybody in the room as opposed to her initial plan, which was to do away with Sadala alone. Subaru steps up and shames her for being such a bad lady. He yaps on and on about some other meaningless things and buys Puck enough time to restore all his mana to attack the assassin. When Puck's ready, he throws a bunch of crystals at Elsa but doesn't even manage to scratch her. Elsa switches to the offensive and begins attacking Sadala. Sadala, on the other hand, accepts the fight. Together, the duo go at it for a while with Rom, Subaru and Felt spectating from the back of the building. At one point in the battle, Sadala manages to trap Elsa. She directs one large attack at Elsa but she still manages to dodge it. Puck becomes very tired as he's run out of mana, so he retreats to the spirit world to rest up, leaving Sadala all alone to fight the dreadful Elsa. While the two fight, Felt finally thanks Subaru for saving her earlier. If only she'd listened to him earlier on, this probably wouldn't have happened. Old man Rom decides to go help Sadala out. He picks up his blade and fights Elsa with all his strength. Sadly, Elsa was too fast for him. She corners him and slashes his neck before continuing her fight with Sadala. Subaru clenches his fist and considers dying again to restart his day. However, the pain of dying on Elsa's blade was too much to bear. With time running out, Subaru makes a split-second decision to save Felt at all costs. As Elsa's about to slash Felt up, Subaru gets in the way and carries her. Then, he tells Felt to wait for an opening so she can escape. Felt still tries to argue her way through, but Subaru tells her it's for the best. He picks up a large wooden bat and finally distracts Elsa long enough for Felt to escape. After she's gone, Elsa slashes Subaru to the ground and pauses their fight for a while. In the meantime, Sadala thanks Subaru for giving the fight his all, despite being the weaker one amongst them all. Subaru, upon hearing those words, gets invigorated and challenges Elsa to a fight. Elsa takes him up on his challenge and traps his leg. She then raises her knife to deal enough damage to Subaru, but she's stopped halfway by Reinhard, who orders them to stop fighting. Upon seeing a stronger opponent, Elsa takes some steps back and introduces herself to the powerful saint. Reinhard tells her he was summoned over there by Felt when he found her running frantically through the deserted streets. Reinhard asks Elsa to surrender, but Elsa tells him it's not possible. He chuckles a bit and asks Subaru to stay near Sadala, who is busy healing Rom with her magic. Subaru has a little discussion with Sadala as she heals the injured old man. Meanwhile, Reinhard draws a fake sword and uses it to fight Elsa. Reinhard destroys her first weapon and keeps up with the attacks. When Sadala is done healing old man Rom, Subaru gives the signal for Reinhard to go all out on Elsa. Reinhard smiles and uses the rusty sword in his hand to unleash a very powerful magic attack that blows the entire place up. After taking care of Elsa, Subaru finally stands tall and thanks Reinhard for saving him this time. At least he won't have to die and be reborn to that day again. Just as he lets his guard down, Elsa shows up from behind and tries to surprise attack Sadala. Thankfully, Subaru manages to pick up a wooden baton and save Sadala just in time. Elsa, seeing as she's failed woefully, retreats and promises to be back. Subaru gets back up and introduces himself. He then asks Sadala, the beautiful lady, to tell him her real name. Sadala looks very sheepishly and names herself Emilia. Then, she thanks Subaru for saving her and extends her hand for a handshake. Subaru sighs and accepts her handshake. Later on, Reinhard picks up the weapon Subaru used to block Elsa's attack from earlier, and realizes it's been cut in half. Just then, it dawned on Subaru that he was injured in the attack. He loses consciousness and collapses. While he's passed out, Reinhard asks Sadala what she plans to do with Subaru. Sadala, aka Emilia, tells him she'll take Subaru to her mansion. As for Felt, she thanks Emilia for her help and returns Emilia's insignia to her. Reinhard, after seeing the insignia on Felt's hands, gets very disturbed and captures her for having such an heirloom in her hands. After rendering her unconscious, Reinhard takes a long hard look at the moon and returns to the palace with Felt. The following day, Subaru wakes up in Emilia's mansion. He checks for his wounds and is surprised to find it's healed up completely. Confused, Subaru gets up from his bed and walks around the corridors searching for a life form. He discovers that the hallway is a looping one, so he opens the first door he sets his eyes on and finds the famous librarian Betty doing her thing. He mistakes her for a little girl and begins saying derogatory things to her. Betty punishes his disrespectful ass by electrifying the life out of him and stealing all his mana before sending him out of her quarters. Subaru wakes up again for the third time that day. This time, he hears two ladies talking silently about him. He focuses his ears to hear what they say and finds out they are criticizing every part of him. He jolts up from his bed and finds the cute ladies shying away from him. Shortly afterwards, Emilia walks into the room to check up on her guest. On seeing Subaru, Emilia discusses a few things with him and the girl. When they're done, Subaru gets out of bed and into the yard for his morning exercise with Emilia. There, he instructs Emilia to follow him for directions. Puck also shows up behind Emilia and resumes work for the day. At that point, Subaru ends their morning exercise session. He holds Puck in his hands and massages its soft fur. Emilia stands and watches Subaru play with her support soldier. She smiles a little and calls him weird for caressing her cat like that. Just then, the two maids from earlier arrive to inform Emilia that their lord, Roswaal, is back. Emilia and Subaru return to the mansion to meet the lord of the castle. Initially, they meet Betty, who fondles Puck like her own. But when Roswaal comes by, Subaru mistakes him for a clown who was hired to entertain them during breakfast. However, when he finds out that Roswaal is the lord of the manor, he swallows his spit and settles to eat breakfast with the lot. At breakfast, they discuss the chores and responsibilities of the house as Subaru questions the two maids about what they do at the mansion. He tastes their food and appreciates the complexity of the flavors in the entire dish. After eating, Roswaal tells Subaru about the happenings in the royal palace. Apparently, the kingdom is currently without a king as it's being plagued by an epidemic. Subaru gets a little scared of him being off now that he's known the truth behind the kingdom. He even begins to suspect himself to be the patient zero of the epidemic plaguing the kingdom. However, Roswaal tells him not to fret and that nobody thinks of him as a traitor. Emilia butts into the discussion and shows Subaru her insignia. When asked about it, she explains to Subaru that the insignia is an item that proves someone's worthiness to be the next king of the kingdom. The lot continues talking for a few more minutes until Subaru asks to be hired to work as a butler in the mansion. Since nobody objects, Subaru is taken to the dressing room and measured by the two ladies from earlier. When they're done measuring him, they take him on a brief tour around the mansion so he doesn't get lost on the job. At one point in the tour, Subaru finds Betty petting Puck. She throws him out one time and then changes her room, only for him to figure out the right door and catch her petting Puck again. After the tour around the mansion, he begins work immediately. One of the girls shows him his tasks for the day and Subaru finishes all of them before night. Just as he's about to sleep, one of the girls brings him his clothes. Subaru does a few more minor adjustments before calling it a day. The following day, Subaru tries cutting some potatoes for their breakfast dish. His terrible expertise in the job causes him to cut his finger. Moving on, Subaru continues his chores for the day and finishes them before it gets too dark. Under the cover of the dark, Roswaal discusses a few things about Subaru with one of the girl maids. The girl maid tells him about Subaru's conspicuous acts but soon tells Roswaal he shouldn't be a problem in the long run. Roswaal commends her observation and continues his thing. Meanwhile, Emilia is seen with Subaru enjoying their time on the lawn. Subaru gets emotional at one point and expresses his innermost feelings to Emilia. He gets so carried away that he accidentally shows Emilia the cuts on his fingers. When he realizes it, it's already too late. Anyway, Subaru still asks Emilia out on a date to go sightseeing with him. Emilia initially refuses to go, but after much persuasion, she soon accepts it. Subaru's mood gets lightened up and he rushes over to Betty's room to disturb her again. This time, Betty gets very restive and throws him out of her room. Subaru goes to sleep as a happy man as he begins to count down to the next day. Sadly for him, fate had a different thing in mind for poor Subaru. Moments after he wakes up the following day, he finds out that his time has been reset and the events which happened the previous night never happened. Subaru is confused. However, this time, he decides to take a different approach. Moments after he wakes up, the two maid angel girls, Rem and Ram, appear near him to welcome him back to the mansion. Subaru covers his face and rushes over to another room to reflect on the kind of spell or curse he's been placed under. Unknown to him, he'd broken into the terrible Beatrice's library. When he finds out, it's already too late as Betty, or Beatrice, is already talking to him. From their conversation, it turns out Subaru had previously woken up earlier that day and had come to disturb Betty's peace. Subaru thanks her for her time and heads out to the yard to double-check something. Betty lets him out and Subaru gets to the yard to find Emilia. There, he sees her walking across the lawn and approaches her. Subaru couldn't be any happier to see Emilia and her adorable face. He talks to her a little bit and gets the happiness he needs to not fall into total despair. Even Puck, the fluffy pet talking cat, shows up to join their conversation. When they're done talking, Subaru rushes back inside to have dinner with everyone, including Roswaal, the lord of the mansion. Moments into eating breakfast, Subaru asks Roswaal to employ him as a butler in the mansion again. Subaru plans to relive the same experience he had the previous so he can break the curse. This plan almost works, but unfortunately for him, he is forced to have a break in the bathhouse in the middle of the day. While at the bathhouse soaking away his sorrows, the impulsive Roswaal walks in unclothed and teases Subaru before getting into the bath to chill out. While taking their baths, the duo talk about the maid girls, Rem, the blue-haired one, and Ram, the pink-haired one. After he's done, Subaru steps out of the bathhouse and finds Ram at the entrance bringing Roswaal's clothes to him. Subaru, upon seeing her, covers all his exposed areas to prevent Ram from seeing his small PP. Ram shows no interest in whatever is down there. Instead, she tells him to get ready to meet her later that night for something she couldn't discuss there. Subaru rushes to his room fidgeting as he thinks Ram wanted to grape him or something. However, when the night comes, Ram enters his room and tells him she's there to help him learn to read and write. Once he can master that skill, he can help out more in the house. Subaru, after thinking about the good this can do, agrees to learn their characters. He picks up the calligraphy pen and begins scribbling on the papyrus in front of him. A few moments later, he begins pouring his heart out to Ram, completely unaware that she was already asleep. When he sees her moaning softly on the bed, he angrily breaks his pen. The following day, Subaru wakes up early and puts on his butler's attire again, ready for work. He asks Rem, the blue-haired maid, if she could allow him to sew her clothes for her. However, Rem tells him there's no need. Subaru is very surprised at Rem's poor sense of fashion, so he tries convincing her to put on more clothes besides their maid outfits. Rem sees this as an insult and begins to say insulting things towards Subaru. Eventually, she walks away from Subaru and urges him to continue his day's work. Subaru joins the girls in the kitchen and cuts his fingers again from his inexperience. Ram chastises him for being such a terrible butler and also urges him to take care of his hair. After cutting vegetables in the kitchen, the trio headed out to the yard to trim out the bushes. There, they discuss hair and duties in the mansion. Hours pass by and Subaru is seen cleaning the bathhouse. Just then, Rem interrupts him and apologizes for making insulting remarks towards him earlier that day. Subaru tells her he'll forgive her on the condition that she helps comb his hair. Rem picks up another scrubbing brush and joins Subaru in washing the floor. She says a few derogatory things to him and then succumbs to his wishes. Subaru, after his work, follows Rem out to town to get some supplies. At the supply area, he finds some kids playing and joins them in their fun till Rem finishes getting all the supplies. On their way home, Rem and Subaru talk about kids like they're some bad people. Subaru tries to stop her from talking down on children, but with Rem being Rem, she continues talking about it. Eventually, Subaru changes the topic and says a few good things about Ram, and this makes Rem smile. That night, Emilia fills in for Ram to supervise Subaru's learning session for the night. Subaru's mind beats out of rhythm as he gets pretty scared about what to do. Seconds later, he musters up courage and asks Emilia out on a date. Emilia initially asks him about what a date is. Subaru explains it to her and convinces her to follow him on a date. Subaru becomes so happy that he promises never to sleep that night so he can survive the night and avoid dying in his sleep. Unfortunately for Subaru, he was about to experience another canon event in his night. As he waits anxiously for morning in his room, he feels a sudden cold and the lights go out. Subaru rushes to the corridor shivering and wondering why his body feels queasy. Sadly, it turns out he'd been poisoned earlier that day and the poison was already taking effect. Subaru collapses in the hallway and is slashed by an assassin sent to kill him. Subaru wakes up in agonizing pain as he returns to the same state he was in his time leap. He unintentionally scares Ram and Rem, who are near him at the time. Subaru realizes they probably hadn't met him before, so he tries to calm them down. Then, he dresses up and walks through the hallway, trying to retrace his steps and possibly figure out what the hell happened the previous night. Betty, who seems to be following him, interrupts him and calls him irritating. Apparently, he'd already entered her library without her knowing. Subaru apologizes for causing her any issues and asks her to serve him some tea. Betty takes offense at such a statement, so she politely asks Subaru to get out of her library. Subaru doesn't seem to get the memo initially as he continues to pry into whatever book she is reading. When she couldn't take it anymore, she threw Subaru out her window and he fell to the shrubs below. Emilia finds Subaru covered in manure from the shrubs and tells him about it. Subaru throws a fuss over being covered in manure, but Emilia tells him it's okay since he didn't know about it initially. To help rid him of all the gunk, Emilia wakes Puck and asks him to wash Subaru up. Puck appears in Emilia's hands and uses a water-themed spell to clean Subaru up. Moments later, Emilia, Puck, and Subaru all play on the lawn there in the yard. Subaru gets into a little fight with Puck and causes Emilia to laugh out loud from the cuteness. Subaru gets very proud of himself for finally making Emilia laugh. Emilia, who noticed Subaru adding the tan suffix to her name, asks him about it. Subaru tells her it's what friends call each other and she should be proud to have such a name from him. Emilia, on hearing that she may have just made one friend, gets very flustered and covers her eyes in shame. Subaru talks secretly with Puck and finds out it's one of Emilia's long-lost wishes to be called such nicknames. After much explanation, the two maids, Rem and Ram, arrive to inform of Roswaal's return. This time, Subaru decided to try a different approach. He plans to work meticulously through the next 3 days just so he can quietly figure out who his assassin is, provided they're amongst them. When Roswaal asks him what he wishes to do, Subaru chooses to be a normal guest in the mansion, instead of asking to work with them as a butler. Roswaal grants him his wish and Subaru spends the rest of his day investigating the mystery around his death. By evening time, Subaru tries to talk to Ram but gets ignored. The following day, Subaru approaches Betty to ask her about the type of spell or curse he's been placed under. You know, the curse that makes him die in his sleep and wake up completely fine in a time leap. Initially, Betty tries to push him away but Subaru begs her to hear him out. After hearing all he had to say, she decided to help him. After a few readings, Subaru finds out he's been cursed by a shaman who seems to be draining his mana each time he goes to sleep. Subaru asks him if there is anyone who could do such magic in the mansion. Betty tells her only she and Puck could do such high-end magic. Betty also tells him she was the one who helped heal him back when he was brought to the mansion. Subaru finds this hard to believe, so he tries to tease the truth out of her. Betty gets understandably pissed and throws him out of her window again. He gets himself up from the grass and continues investigating his death. From the information he could gather, Subaru finds out he died only 3 times in the capital before he was brought to the mansion. This could only mean he's not allowed to die again since he's already died 3 times in the mansion. He then recalls his last meeting with Puck where he asked him to keep an eye on Emilia for him. While he gathers his thoughts together, Ram interrupts him to serve him some tea. She sits on his bed and asks after his studies. Subaru tells her he's been making some progress in his studies. Moving on from that, he narrates a story about a red and blue ogre to Ram. In summary, the story entailed the blue ogre having to lose everything just to save the red ogre who couldn't live life on his own. After hearing the sad story, Ram insults both ogres for being illogical and letting their hearts decide for them. The blue ogre would have taught the red ogre how to live on his own, while the red ogre would have avoided being a burden to his friend. Subaru sighs and chooses both ogres as they were only trying to get through life. Ram looks down on his answer and tells him to be wiser next time. Subaru ignores her insult and talks to her about some other random fact about their kingdom and a great waterfall. Later on, she ends her conversation with Subaru and heads back to the kitchen. The following day, Subaru packs up his load to leave the mansion for his next destination. Emilia gets worried about him and asks him to reconsider leaving them. However, Subaru had already made up his mind and assured Emilia that he'd be found nonetheless. Subaru tries complimenting the angel maids once more before leaving the mansion. Emilia rushes after him to say her final goodbyes before leaving him in the hands of fate. Subaru travels through the forest and turns around just to stake out and investigate Emilia's room from there. He takes out a fancy kitchen knife and stares at it as if waiting for something to happen. By evening time, the assassin strikes again. Subaru runs for dear life and gets trapped on a cliff. He takes off his shirt and prepares himself to fight the assailant. When the assassin shows face, he's disappointed to find out his attacker is none other than Rem. Rem shows no remorse for attacking a harmless man. She even advises him to accept his fate so she can grant him a painless death. Subaru asks her what he did to deserve such treatment from her, but Rem refuses to tell him. Instead, she asks him about his true intentions for Emilia. She thought Subaru was working with Emilia's enemy. All attempts to change her mind proved very futile. Subaru then makes a last-minute attempt to make a run for it. He takes out his cell phone and flashes Rem's eyes before bailing. After running a few meters, Rem cuts his leg and immobilizes him. She then approaches him and stops his leg from bleeding just so she can get the information she needs out of his mouth. Subaru keeps begging her to let him go, as he would never harm Emilia. Unfortunately for him, Rem was hard-headed as she flogged him and kept asking him for the truth. Subaru tells her he has nothing to do with Emilia's capture or anything. He's just a guy trying his best to make friends in a new world. Sadly, Rem refuses to believe him. She tells him that his aura reeks of the witch's aura and it disgusts her. Subaru falls into total despair and starts crying. He screams his lungs out, asking Rem why she hates him so much. Rem refuses to let him finish talking as she slits his throat and leaves him to die. The following day, Subaru wakes up on the same bed with both maid sisters there with him. He freaks out a little and refuses to talk to anyone until Emilia arrives to see him. When she gets there, Subaru warns her never to have anything to do with him as he fears the curse may affect her too. He then gets the idea to tell her everything, but as he's about to do so, a dark cloud surrounds them and freezes time for a little moment. When this happens, a dark humanoid hand strolls through Subaru's body until it gets to his heart. The hand grips Subaru's heart and makes him more afraid than ever to speak out. Subaru gets out of the trance in one piece and decides to lock up and chase Emilia away. Over the next few scenes, Subaru remains on the bed thinking of his next move. Roswaal comes over to see him, but Subaru refuses to give him any audience. Later on, Betty arrives to check on Subaru. When asked why she would even care, Betty tells him Puck and Emilia made her do it. Betty then moves closer to him and discovers the stench of the Witch of Envy on Subaru. Subaru gets very surprised and asks Betty why he would even be affiliated with the witch. Betty tells him he may be getting favored by the witch for having so much of her aura. Subaru just sits there and wonders what he could do to avoid dying the 5th time in a row. He comes up with an idea and asks Betty to help keep him safe from harm for the next few days. Betty sighs and makes a contract with him to keep him safe as long as he's still in the mansion. Subaru gets so emotional and covers his face with his hands. Betty tells him to cut the crap and just be happy she agreed to help him. Later that night, Subaru has a nightmare about his previous encounter with Rem. In the dream, he relived the horrific moment with Rem. Thankfully, Betty's protection spell helped him overcome the nightmare, and he returned to his sleep peacefully. The following morning, Betty wakes him up and tells him to avoid breaking anything in her library. Subaru spends half of the day there in the library helping Betty out. At one point, she steps out of her library to get something, leaving Subaru inside. Subaru is left alone with thousands of books. He gets scared a little and opens the door to check out the building. He sees the shining sun and basks in its gracefulness as he walks to the hallway. Emilia catches up to him a little while later and asks him to follow her somewhere. Subaru blindly follows Emilia until they arrive in front of a room. Subaru is about to ask Emilia what the matter is, but Ram's screams stop him from doing so. Subaru enters the room and finds Ram crying over her sister's dead body. Subaru wonders why and how Rem died, but Roswaal tells him Rem had died of weakness, almost as if she fell asleep and couldn't wake up again. Subaru realizes that Rem wasn't the shaman he was after. Emilia asks Subaru to tell them anything that could help them understand what was going on. Subaru tries to tell them, but he remembers the incident with the humanoid hand and stops himself from talking. Just then, Rem loses her shit and attacks Subaru, as if he was the one who killed Rem. Thankfully, Betty arrived just in time to save Subaru. Roswaal gets suspicious and challenges Betty to help Subaru out. Betty stands her ground and refuses to be intimidated by him. Eventually, everyone picks sides. Subaru makes a last-minute decision and runs away from the mansion. He races to the spot where he died and thinks about dying again so Ram can be revived in his time leap. While peering around, he finds a cliff and walks towards it. However, he gets very scared to kill himself, so he falls asleep at the cliff's edge. Hours later, Betty finds him there and wakes him up. She tells him she plans on keeping him safe from himself no matter what happens. Subaru realizes he's been selfish all this while, so he decides to make the hardest decision. Initially, Betty promises to help him escape the domain so he can be free of the curse. However, Subaru realizes some other things that solidify his resolve to kill himself. He remembers Rem's words screaming at him to leave her alone. Just then, Ram catches up to them seething in rage. Betty stands in front of Subaru to save him, but Subaru tells her not to bother, that he's already made his decision. Without thinking twice, Subaru thanks everyone for helping him out and races towards the edge of the cliff. Subaru jumps off the cliff with a smile on his face and crashes head onto the ground, ending his life in the process. Mere moments after meeting his end, Subaru wakes up on the same bed again. This time, he finds the two sisters, Rem and Ram, together. He suddenly feels a pain in his belly and squints his face. Rem and Ram immediately rush to find out what's wrong. Subaru holds their hands to confirm if they truly are the ones with him. After confirming his suspicion, Subaru smiles and appreciates the girls. Rem and Ram, who technically haven't seen him before, step back from the pervert in front of them. Subaru smiles still and waits until Emilia comes by to check up on him. During breakfast, Subaru asks Roswaal to hire him to work in the mansion. This time, he tries yet another approach different from the last one. By helping the residents with stuff they need help with, he can earn their trust and easily avoid being suspected as an enemy. Luckily for him, Roswaal has no objections towards his request as he allows Subaru to do his work in peace. Immediately after breakfast, he rushes over to different sections of the mansion to help out with 1 or 2 tasks. By lunchtime, Subaru takes a break on the lawn to chill out. Puck meets up with him there to keep him company. The duo discuss Emilia and her magic attribute. From their conversation, Subaru finds out that Emilia is a spirit arts user, not a magic user. He also figures out that he may have some magic lying somewhere inside him and asks Puck to help him find out. Puck does his mojo and figures out Subaru's attribute to be Shadow, which is a very rare magic attribute to have. At that point, Emilia returns from her chilling outing and finds Subaru throwing a fuss over his magic attribute. She calms him down and lets him know just how special his magic attribute is. Subaru still asks for some proof to know whether he's truly a shadow user. Emilia and Puck throw him into a dark trance that scares Subaru. He thankfully gets out of the trance and returns to normal before Emilia notices something's wrong. Moving on, Emilia takes Subaru on a tour around the mansion's yard to learn more about visualizing and actualizing his magic abilities. At one point, Subaru tries actualizing some of his magic abilities only to end up throwing out a large plume of black smoke over the place. After trying such a dangerous trick, he rests his body on the outdoor bench. Emilia feels sorry for his whining and puts a Bako fruit in his mouth. This fruit, which is said to stimulate a mage's mana, makes Subaru strong again so he's able to continue his day. By nightfall, Ram and Roswaal meet to discuss their guest, Subaru. Roswaal asks about him and Ram tells him they haven't noticed anything out of the ordinary yet. All they can do at the moment is watch him closely. Life goes on pretty well for Subaru as he sleeps and wakes up peacefully. The following morning, Subaru meets with Betty to ask her about lifting his curse. Betty tells him there's no way to undo a curse unless the caster themselves nullifies it. Subaru then gets curious and asks Betty about the Witch of Envy. Betty tells him all he needs to know about the witch. However, she calls the witch Sadala, which makes him remember the first time he saw Emilia as she initially called herself Sadala. Subaru begins to wonder if the witch had taken Emilia's form just so she could curse him into the endless time leap he's currently in. Anyways, with no major conclusion, Subaru smiles and makes his resolve on the matter. When it's time to begin work for the day, Subaru plays a little with Emilia and Puck and manages to annoy them. When he leaves, Emilia becomes very uneasy because she suspects something is wrong with Subaru. Up next, Subaru drops a nice vase and quickly rushes to clean it up. Meanwhile, Emilia and Puck keep wondering what Subaru could be going through for him to be so hyperactive. Subaru keeps doing what he does best. He quickly replaced the vase he broke before Rem could notice for too long. Rem gets very suspicious about things and asks him how he knows about the vases. Subaru gives her a half-assed answer and continues doing his work hyperactively. By the end of the day, he washes his face and relaxes for once. Emilia catches up to him and tries to calm him down. Subaru still tries to keep up the act, but Emilia sees through his tricks. She takes him to her room, sits him down, sits next to him and puts his head on her lap. Subaru asks the necessary questions and gets the answers he's looking for. Emilia tells him to get all the rest he can get before the sun rises. Subaru keeps on yapping about a few more things to avoid raising Emilia's suspicions. Emilia shuts him up by kissing his forehead. This makes Subaru sob quietly and he begins to open up. Emilia keeps quiet and lets him sleep off on her lap. Very early the next morning, Rem stops by to call Subaru to work. However, Emilia asks her to give him a day off to rest from all his troubles. By nightfall, Subaru wakes up on Emilia's lap and heads straight to Betty's room. There, he fusses over sleeping extra late. Betty then tells him of a way to nullify a curse. However, he has to have physical contact with the caster of the spell. Subaru draws out all the dots and finally gets a lead. He holds Betty up and thanks her for helping him out. The following morning, Subaru wakes up a new man. He finds Emilia and thanks her for helping him get the lead he's been so desperate to discover. When he's done, he joins Rem and Ram in the kitchen to begin his regular day's work. Up next, Subaru joins Ram and Rem on their way to the market to get supplies. While in the market, he plays around with the people and manages to put smiles on their faces. After getting their supplies, Ram insults Subaru and calls him a lowlife for embarrassing himself just so people can laugh. The children step in and defend their hero against the terrible Ram. While discussing with the girls, a little girl calls for Subaru and brings his attention to a little patch in the dark woods. Subaru walks into the woods and helps the girl recover her lost dog. When she gets her dog, he tries touching it, but the dog gets very annoyed at Subaru. Subaru approaches it gently and touches the head, which makes the dog smile. Life goes on normally for the trio until it gets almost dark and they return to the mansion. There, they meet Roswaal, who was just stepping out to attend to some troublesome thing. Subaru is very surprised to see this happening, as this doesn't happen normally in his time leap. Subaru knows his plan is working, so he's encouraged to do more. By nightfall, he visits Betty to tell her about his findings. He concludes that he's been cursed. Now Betty has to find a way to lift the curse of him. Betty, however, tells him that there's nothing they can do at this point. Subaru, however, isn't ready to take no for an answer. He convinces or threatens Betty to save him, or else he'll let Puck know she's a wicked person. Betty sighs and places her hand on his forehead to see what will happen. Moments later, some black mist escapes from Subaru's right hand. Betty sees this and dispels the curse. Subaru gets very suspicious and recalls the little dog from earlier touching his right hand back then. He thanks Betty and rushes out of her room to meet Ram and Rem in the hallway. There, he tells them the truth and chooses one of them, Rem, to follow him to the village so he can challenge the folks there. Before they go, Emilia stops by to say hi. She notices the tension in the air and asks him about it. Subaru tells her he's just going out to settle something, and Emilia lets him go after giving him her blessing. Subaru and Rem race to the village only to find out that many of the village's children have gone missing. He quickly races to that dark part of the woods and finds several green lamp barriers placed there. Rem notices a lamp that's been broken and immediately recognizes it as a witch fiend attack. He sends their entourage back to the village to seek help while he goes in to find the children. Rem tries to understand why Subaru would go so far for some children in just a random village. She asks him for the reason he's risking his life to save some kids, and Subaru gives her the anime talk of morals and not giving up. When they're done, Rem decides to follow him to the woods. Herself and Subaru track the scent of the kids deep into the forest. At one point, they smell something inhuman and follow the scent to a plain field. There, they find the children all lying there and weak to their bones. Subaru finds curse marks on some of their body parts and asks Rem to heal them with her magic. When she starts healing them, Petra, one of the children, wakes up from her slumber and tries to tell Subaru something. Unfortunately, she didn't last long enough to speak anything of importance. Subaru hushes her back to sleep and prepares himself to find the culprit by all means. He gets up, leaves Rem with the kids, and leaves after assuring Rem that he'll be fine. Subaru treads deep into the forest and finds one of the kids, the owner of the dog, lying there on the ground. Moments later, a cursed dog resembling the little puppy from earlier shows up for a little while and returns to the bushes before attacking Subaru. Subaru takes a bite from the dog and then hauls it up in the air before smashing it on the ground. A few seconds later, several other cursed dogs show up and rush towards Subaru for an attack. Thankfully, Rem arrives just in time to stop a few of them from killing Subaru. Subaru picks up the kid and takes her back to the village while Rem keeps the dogs at bay. When they become way too much for her to handle, she joins Subaru. Soon enough, the leader of the Cursed Dogs Association, the little puppy from earlier, shows up and controls his dogs to knock Rem out. After being knocked out, Rem's body awakens and transforms her into a madwoman. She laughs maniacally and takes out all the dogs she could find. Subaru sees the horrible state she's in and refuses to let Rem lose her mind. So, he pushes her out of the way and lets the dogs bite them. Rem gets back to her normal self and races towards Subaru to keep him alive. The following day, Subaru wakes up to find Ram and Rem fidgeting over his body. He's been injured but not killed in the wild dog attack. When they're gone, he finds Emilia and her pet, Puck, sitting on a chair not too far away as they wait for him to wake up to them. While Emilia sleeps, Puck shows his face and welcomes Subaru back to life. Subaru, after enduring various verbal abuses from the talking cat, asks after the sisters and where they went. Puck tells him Rem is back in the village to watch over the injured children. As for Emilia, she passed out while healing Subaru, so they should leave her to recover her strength before it's too late. A while later, Subaru gets off his bed and heads outside for a walk. He finds Ram there waiting for him, collects a freshly steamed potato from her stash, and throws it in his mouth. Shortly after eating, they discuss the state of the village after the attack. Ram thanks Subaru for helping the village take care of their Ulgarm problem. That's what the wild dogs were called, Ulgarms. Over the next few scenes, Subaru walks around the village to watch over the kids and ensure they're okay. After his little visit, he finds Betty, who asks for a word with him on the curse. When they get their time alone, Betty tells him it's virtually impossible to get rid of the curse he's under. Subaru asks for a reasonable explanation and Betty tells him he's been turned into witch fiend food. Instead of going into despair, Subaru remains calm and talks normally. Betty is surprised to find Subaru calm and collected, despite how fucked up his life is about to be. Subaru chills down and shows her his battle scars. The duo keep talking and talking until something very weird happens. Suddenly, Subaru gets a clairvoyant feeling of Rem being in danger. He snaps out of it and asks Betty for Rem's location. Just then, Ram arrives and tells him Rem had already left the village for the forest to take down the forest dogs' Ulgarms all on her own. Subaru knows what will happen if Rem is left alone with those dogs. He begs Ram to allow him to follow her so they can find Rem together. Ram initially opposes his request, but eventually, she lets him follow her after much persuasion. Betty steps in and tries to discourage Subaru from going. However, Subaru already has his mind set on saving Rem one way or the other. So, he readies himself and heads into the forest with Ram. After walking a few meters into the forest, Subaru gets tired and starts panting. Ram makes fun of him for being a wimp and Subaru recalls just how much the children from the village believe in him. He then mentions just how much they like him and for that reason, he can't give up on keeping the village safe. Ram kind of reasons with him but soon cuts the chit-chat when she gets too emotional. She uses her clairvoyance to scan the area around them and discovers several Ulgarms coming to attack them. Ram destroys the few that do attack them and continues their journey to find Rem. On their way there, Subaru gets curious and asks Ram why her sister is the one with demonic horns and she's the odd one out. Ram tells him that they are the only twins in their village allowed to live. So, at a young age, she got careless and lost her source of strength, her horn. Ever since then, she's been reliant on Rem to help keep them both out of danger. She describes just how bad things can get with Rem out of control, and wishes she never saw Rem in such a situation again. Subaru heaves a heavy sigh and tries to tell Ram about his return of death curse. However, before he speaks it out, the hand from earlier holds his throat. Mission success, as this means the witch fiends would be drawn to them and they can take them all out. Mere seconds later, the Ulgarms surround and attack them. Ram uses her powers and destroys the ones she could destroy before passing out from exhaustion. Subaru sees trouble coming, so he picks her up and runs for dear life as the dogs pursue them. He falls off a cliff at one point and is saved by Ram's wind magic. After getting to the foot of the hill, Subaru finds more dogs surrounding them. Luckily for him, Rem arrives in the nick of time to attack anything that breathes. Thinking she was still on their side, Subaru tried to speak some sense into her head. However, Rem couldn't recognize him in her demon state. She attacks Subaru together with the dogs present there. The dogs also fight back and knock her down at a point, but she gets back up and keeps taking every one of them down. Subaru takes advantage of the distraction and runs to a safe place. Ram wakes up for a while and tells Subaru of a way to stop her sister. All he has to do is cut her horn so she can get back to normal. Subaru looks at the menacing Ram and wonders how the hell he can do something like that. Well, he gets an idea and executes it only to freeze at the last second and mess it all up. Thankfully, Subaru gets a second chance as he's hauled several feet into the air. This time, he makes sure he hits the target. After taking down her horn, Subaru carries Rem and returns to the village with Ram. On their way there, Rem recalls her life as a baby and toddler. Moments after she was born with her twin, Ram, the elder of the demon clan, proposed that they kill the twins since twins are a taboo in their land. However, as they're about to end the lives of two young girls, Ram, the stronger one, stops them from doing so with her immense powers. The elders immediately let the twins live. A few years later, the duo grew into beautiful young girls. While Ram was the prodigy helping out everyone in the village, Rem was the useless one. As such, she would always try to catch up to her sister by pushing herself past her limits. Even their mother would sometimes favor Ram over her sister, Rem, as she was the one everybody liked. Ram, on the other hand, understood her sister's feelings, so oftentimes, she would help her out with some stuff and keep her spirits up. One day, Rem decided to cook a special dish for the family. The following day, she heads into the forest to get some of the ingredients she'd need to make it work. Unfortunately for her, there was a heavy downpour that fell a tree which almost crushed her. Thankfully, her big sister, Ram, was there to save her. After cooking dinner, her mother mildly scolds Rem for troubling her sister once again. Their father, however, who's the more understanding one, stops her from doing so and compliments her daughter's cooking. A few hours after dinner, everyone goes to sleep. Rem suddenly has a nightmare about the villagers gathering around her and calling her a failure. Scared, she runs to a nearby shed and hides there. Just then, her sister, Ram, holds her hand in real life and she wakes up. Rem finds comfort in her sister's embrace and appreciates her for all she does for her. A few days pass with life being life for Rem and Ram. However, things take a turn for the worse when Rem wakes up one night to find her sister fighting and burning down their entire village, including their parents. When she's done taking down most of them, she inches closer to her sister to protect her. When she lets her guard down, one of the villagers appears from behind and cuts down her horns. Now that Ram's horn is gone, she's utterly powerless. Ever since then, Rem has taken it upon herself to make up for causing her sister's horn loss. From cleaning to fighting to making sure Ram is okay, Rem makes sure to be all over the place just so that she can atone for her sin. After reflecting on her past, Rem snaps back to reality only to find Subaru and Ram running away from the forest Olgarms. They manage to find a bush to hide inside so they don't get eaten. There, Rem asks Subaru why he would risk his life to save someone like her. She then says a few more derogatory things about herself and forces Subaru to headbutt her for thinking lowly of herself. Subaru makes her know she's more than Ram's replacement and is worthy of being saved. After bringing her head to the right place, Subaru and the others find the Olgarms waiting for them to show up. Subaru thinks of something and decides to risk his life to buy the girls some time. After relaying his plan to the girls, he rushes out of the bush and faces the dog boss of the Olgarm while Ram carries Rem to safety. When the dog comes in for an attack, Subaru uses his Shamak shadow powers to blind the dog and injure its tongue. The dog gets back up and prepares for one final attack. Subaru closes his eyes to death yet again, but this time, he's saved Roswaal, who arrived in the nick of time. After seeing their master, Rem and Ram rush back to the fight scene to say hi and thank Roswaal for saving them. Roswaal thanks Subaru personally for helping his girls out and promises to pay him back one day for it. The following day, Subaru wakes up to see Rem sitting beside his bed. He sees the sullen face on her and asks her if his curse will activate or not. Rem tells him since Roswaal took care of the witch fiends, then there's no way the curse will activate. Subaru thanks her for the help and gets to listen to her talk about herself and Ram. He sees that she still thinks very lowly of herself, so this time, he gives a long talk about self-esteem, all while giving her several reasons why she's special. After hearing all he had to say, Rem cries out loud for the first time and hugs Subaru. Subaru also tells her to smile and laugh as she's now better than whoever she was back then. Rem takes his words and lets out a beautiful smile on her face. By nightfall, Ram meets with Roswaal in his room to talk about Subaru. After saying one or two things about Subaru, Ram gets to sit on Roswaal's lap to get some mana from him. While feeding her some mana, Roswaal remains strong in his conviction to kill a certain dragon. Meanwhile, Emilia and Subaru see for the first time that day in the yard. Emilia thanks Subaru for helping her save Ram and Rem. Subaru, however, asks her to pay him back by going on a date with him. To his surprise, Emilia agrees to do so. The following day, Subaru and Emilia visit the village for their date. There, they get to play with the children and sign their autographs. Once they're done, they walk back to the mansion. On their way there, they discuss the Olgarm arc and the saves Subaru made there. As they approach their mansion, they find a dragon carriage from the royal palace there waiting for them. The butler, Wilhelm, urges Emilia to go inside and listen to what the emissary has to say about her. Subaru follows her inside the mansion and tries to eavesdrop from what they are seeing, but Emilia tells him to stay back so he doesn't try anything stupid this time. Subaru gets very curious about what the emissary has to say. So, he picks up some expensive tea from Ram's kitchen and takes it to Wilhelm, the butler. Wilhelm tastes the good tea and gets so impressed that he decides to tell Subaru all he knows about the meeting with the emissary. So it turns out Emilia may be the next queen of the kingdom, as the emissary was there to summon her to the palace. Before Wilhelm can go into details on the entire subject, Ferris, a demi-human, shows up and teases Subaru about being the errand boy for Emilia. After he meets with the lot, Subaru rushes to the mansion and tries to talk Emilia into letting him come along for the royal selection. Emilia initially refuses to let him come, but after much persuasion from Subaru and Roswaal, Subaru is permitted to go to the capital to get treatment for his wounds but not to cause trouble. While returning to the palace, Ferris questions Wilhelm about taking a liking to someone like Subaru. Wilhelm tells Ferris about Subaru, almost as if he understood Subaru had an understanding about death. Anyways, Emilia, Rem, and Subaru arrive at the capital later that evening for the royal selection. The old merchant from earlier finds Subaru, and this time, he gives him a full bag of apples for returning to his stall. Subaru collects the apples and continues on to the royal palace with Emilia. At the entrance to the palace gates, Emilia meets an old friend, Julius Aka, her former bodyguard. Julius pays his respects and kisses Emilia's hands, which causes Subaru to be dead jealous. Julius notices this and teases Subaru about it, but Subaru keeps his cool and lets him go. As they prepare to enter the royal palace, Subaru squeezes his face as he prepares to enter with Emilia. However, she tells him to stay outside and wait for her to return as he may hear unpleasant things inside. Subaru waits outside and takes a walk to an alleyway around town. There, he finds the 3 mobsters he used to find back then harassing a classy woman. The 3 mobsters, who seem to recognize him, throw abusive words towards him and force him to act fast. Subaru threatens to call Reinhard on them and causes them to get scared in their pants. To make matters worse, Old Man Rom arrives shortly searching for Felt. The mobsters run away very scared and promise to be back. After they're gone, Rom asks Subaru about Felt. Subaru tells him Reinhard had taken her away previously. Rom sighs and walks away to search for Reinhard. Just then, Emilia and an armored man arrive and find the classy woman and Subaru there. Initially, Subaru gets very pissed at him for escorting Emilia, but Emilia tells him to calm down and be cool. Moving on, they all talk about the apple fruit in Subaru's bag. Subaru gives one to the classy lady and leaves with Emilia. That evening, on their way home, Emilia asks Subaru if he knows the status of that classy lady he picked up in the alleyway. Subaru looks confused and tells her he knows nothing about her. When they get home, Emilia makes Subaru promise never to use magic or fight in front of anybody, at least until his body heals fully from his wounds. Subaru reluctantly agrees to her request and continues with his stuff. The following day, Subaru's hard-headedness causes him to want to help Emilia again. He asks Rem where the royal selection is being held and she tells him it's at the royal capital. Subaru tells Rem he can't stand not being involved in Emilia's affairs, so he has to do something to help her out. He heads out to find a way into the castle, but lucky for him, a dragon carriage belonging to the classy lady, Priscilla, stops by and takes him there. In the carriage, Subaru learns that Priscilla is amongst one of the ladies to be selected for the throne. Priscilla lets Subaru know that she's never been unlucky all her life. Moments later, they all arrive at the royal capital and see themselves in the hall for the selection. Emilia is shocked to see Subaru despite telling him not to do so. She asks Subaru why he came there even after telling him not to, but before he can say anything, the royal selection begins and Emilia is called to stand somewhere else. After calling in the Council of Wise Elders, Subaru goes to meet Reinhard and the emissary from earlier, Ferris, or Felix. Subaru is very surprised to see how feminine Felix is, but he keeps his cool and stays silent to witness the event. The announcer says a few things about the throne but is then cut short by some of the rude girls who tell him to make it snappy as they've got other things to do. The other candidates butt into the discussion and keep on talking and talking until they're tired. Then, the announcers make it known that out of the 5 of the candidates for the throne, only one would be considered to be queen. Since there were only 4 candidates, the announcer called on Reinhard to tell them where the 5th princess was. When he comes to the stage, he shocks everyone by revealing the 5th princess, Felt. Felt waltzes into the hall and walks up to Reinhard to say hi. When she's close enough, she kicks him for tricking her into becoming a 5th princess. Reinhard takes it easy on Felt and calms her down. Subaru and the others express their shock as they wonder how in freak's name she got to be a candidate. On seeing Subaru, Felt kicks him as well before going to join the other candidates. After all the necessary introductions, Reinhard placed the insignia in her hands just before she hailed the other candidates. After joining the others, everyone gets very uptight as the real royal selections begin. Subaru could sense the growing unrest within the hall, but he keeps his cool and listens to what the others have to say. Firstly, the wise men ask Reinhard to explain how a gutter rat like Felt suddenly became one of the princesses selected to be queen. Before he gets to speak, Priscilla speaks up and insults Felt. Felt reacted violently to her insults and caused a ruckus in the hall. Emilia also steps in to defend Felt, but Priscilla disrespects her and calls her a witch's incarnate. This makes Emilia very distraught as she tries to prove she has no ties to the witch whatsoever. The event continues as the announcer calls out the names of all the contestants to ensure they're all present for the event. After introducing all of them, Felt makes it known she has no wish to become queen of any kingdom. Some of the wise men then begin to say hurtful things about Emilia and Felt. All efforts to stop their running mouth proves futile. They speak so loudly and stupidly that Subaru is forced to speak out. Emilia tries to calm him down, but Subaru still insults the elders. Emilia finally silences him and reintroduces herself to be a half-elf who's proud of her origins. When she's done talking, the elders ask for Subaru's identity. Subaru walks forward and introduces himself as Emilia's knight and manservant. Julius takes offense at Subaru calling himself a knight amongst all things. To correct him, he calls up the real knights of the kingdom and publicly disgraces Subaru by calling him a weakling who's all talk and can't do anything. Subaru keeps up his pride to save face, but everything comes crashing down when Julius shames him greatly for thinking he was powerful enough to put Emilia on the throne all on his own. Subaru becomes very embarrassed but still tries to keep his pride up by shaming the knights of the entire kingdom. At this point, Emilia gets fed up and silences him in front of everybody. Then, she holds his hand and denies ever knowing right in front of everybody before getting him thrown out of the hall. Moments before they continue the royal selection, Old Man Rom smokes up the entire hall and carries Felt to safety. Sadly for him, he's caught and restrained. Before immediate punishment is meted out to him, Felt bails him out by agreeing to participate in their royal selection. Rom is surprised at Felt's words, but he's soon escorted out of the hall. After he's gone, Felt makes it known that if she's made ruler, she would take down the entire kingdom with everyone in it. Then, the royal selection commences. Julius visits Subaru in the lobby to talk about what happened in the hall. With the face Subaru made towards him, Julius asks Subaru to fight him in a duel in front of the knights of the kingdom. Knowing fully well he stands no chance against Julius, Subaru still lets his pride get the better of him as he agrees to fight Julius. Moments later, the duel begins and Julius beats the hell out of Subaru right in front of everyone. One of the guards rushed to inform the princesses about the fight between Julius and Subaru. This breaks Emilia's heart so much that she steps out of the selection and heads straight to the arena just to stop Subaru from getting his ass beat up really bad. Thankfully, she gets there just in time to stop Julius from delivering a ghastly blow on Subaru. She even calls out to Subaru, hoping for him to stop the madness. Unfortunately, Subaru is already mad as he uses magic against Julius and gets the final beating of his life. Subaru passes out from the fight and wakes up hours later near Emilia. After he's fully awake, Emilia sits him down so they can talk about what happened. Emilia tries to understand why Subaru fought Julius. Subaru tells her it's because he was disrespected by Julius. However, Emilia sees it from a different perspective. Subaru keeps saying he fought for Emilia and his pride, but Emilia makes him know that he was just fighting for himself and not her. If only she could understand the full picture. It's just too bad that the witches wouldn't allow him to talk about his curse to Emilia. Even when he tries to tell her about it right there, the witches still hold his throat. Eventually, Emilia gets the entire thing wrong and breaks up with Subaru as she can't keep worrying about Subaru anymore. Subaru loses it and yells at Emilia, telling her just how much he's sacrificed just to make sure she's safe, sound, and protected. Emilia smiles, thanks him for being there for her, and walks away forever. After the breakup, Subaru becomes very pissed at his own weakness. He begins combat training with the butler, Wilhelm, just so he can get his mind off things. However, this only made things a little worse for him as he kept flashing back to his last meeting with Emilia. Everyone in the palace could see the pain he was passing through. Even Wilhelm, the butler. Felix, however, speaks badly about Subaru and calls him a Dundee for acting emotionally. What they didn't know was that poor Subaru was getting his arse whopped each and every time he spars Wilhelm. A few hours after training, Reinhard visits Subaru to apologize for Julius's actions. He tries to tell Subaru that the duel he had with Julius had no meaning whatsoever. However, Subaru sees his thoughts as offensive and thanks him for being the good guy. But he makes Reinhard know that the duel meant a lot of things to him and he'll never forget how humiliating that was for him. Subaru thanks him once again for caring to visit him before heading back inside the castle to continue training with Wilhelm. Subaru trains so hard that he passes out on the lawn for a few hours. He wakes up by evening time on Rem's lap. Rem comforts his sorry arse and makes him know she still thinks highly of him. The following day, Subaru walks back to town to see the results of the selection event. There, he runs into the merchant from earlier and argues with him over Emilia's identity. Apparently, the people there were all afraid of Emilia as they thought she was a witch. This is because the Witch of Endy came from her own clan of half-elves. Subaru realizes just how bad Emilia's had. He gets very pissed at himself for not knowing earlier on and wishes Emilia had told him about her travels. He returns to the palace to keep training and still gets his arses beat by Wilhelm. By nightfall, Crush, one of the contestants from the royal selection, invites him for an outing in the palace restaurant. There, Subaru sips on some alcohol and gets to hear what the lady has to say. Crush tells him about the influx of marriage proposals she's received as a young. The duo then discuss a little about Wilhelm right before Felix shows up to interrupt them. There, he outrightly talks down on Subaru, but Crush stops her from doing so. Felix then comes in closer to Subaru and tells him to make it up to Emilia as quickly as possible so as to avoid losing her forever. Subaru thinks long and hard about what he could do or say to win Emilia back. He suddenly gets an idea and prepares himself to execute it. The following day, Subaru ends training with his 2 legs and body parts, meaning he's finally getting the hang of it. Just after he ends training, Rem calls him for a meeting. Subaru heeds her calling and meets up with the others in a room. There, they discuss the recent abnormalities in the kingdom. Crush suspects the uprising is due to Margrave's intentions towards Emilia. Subaru clenches his fists and decides to get up and do something about it. He gets up and tells Crush and Rem to hurry up so they can find the people troubling the nation. To his dismay, however, Crush lets him know that she was only protecting him because she had formed a contract with Emilia previously to protect him. So if he goes of his own volition, she would not hesitate to nullify it and declare war on Emilia. Subaru reacts strongly to her sentiment and tells her he'll go save Emilia whether she likes it or not. Felix snaps and hits the nail on the coffin by reminding Subaru just how weak he is and how less things would change even if he were to intervene. Subaru ignores Felix and heads out to meet Wilhelm, who borrows him a dragon carriage. An hour later, Subaru and Rem are on the carriage traveling back to Emilia's mansion. By nightfall, the land dragon gets tired and stops at an inn. Subaru and Rem check into the inn to stay there for the night. Very late at night, Rem walks into Subaru's room to talk to him as she couldn't bring herself to fall asleep. There, she thanks Subaru for being there for her even when she was being mean to him. She hugs Subaru and uses some healing magic on him to calm his mind down just so he can fall asleep. Well, this works and Subaru falls into a very deep sleep. Subaru wakes up very late the following morning and finds Rem gone. He rushes downstairs and finds the letter Rem wrote to him before she left. Apparently, she'd snuck out at dawn to travel to the mansion alone just so she could handle Emilia by herself. Subaru gets so pissed that he spends every last gold coin he had just to get himself a dragon carrier that could take him to the mansion that instant. The carriage driver, Otto, transports Subaru very deep into the forest but then stops in the middle of nowhere when his dragon gets very scared to move further. Subaru gets off the carriage and heads into the heart of the forest. There, he encounters some very strange individuals dressed in an occultic uniform. The individuals surround him in a circle and disperse almost immediately. Subaru pays them no attention as he keeps running towards Emilia's town. When he gets there in the morning, he gets the shock of his life as he finds the entire town reeking of death and destruction. Subaru gets a sudden deja vu feeling as a dreadful look develops in his eyes. He walks towards Emilia's mansion and finds Rem lying dead on the lawn. Subaru doesn't stop there as his mind takes him to Emilia. He checks the storage unit and finds dead bodies piled up there. After vomiting his insides out, Subaru walks into the mansion. He opens the first door he finds and sees Ram and Petra, one of the kids, dead and gone. Subaru screams his heart and keeps walking towards Emilia's room. When he doesn't find her there, he keeps on checking the mansion until he finds a secret door. He opens the door and walks into it only to find the place decorated with very weird icy things. Despite the room being cold as anything, Subaru still walks towards the door in front of him to open it. Just then, his hands freeze to absolute zero and he falls on his butt. Subaru looks up and sees the occultic people around him. It was then that the curse of the room took effect as Subaru suddenly froze to death. In an instant, Subaru is revived at the merchant's shop again. This time, he finds Rem getting some supplies and hugs her tightly. Subaru becomes so shocked that he turns into an imbecile. Rem and the others take him to Crush's home for treatment. After several hours of treatment, Subaru's body refuses to respond. He just stands there like a vegetable and keeps staring at everybody. Crush and the others see no abnormal flow of mana in Subaru's body, so they release him. Rem takes Subaru, thanks Crush and her team for their help, and heads out with Subaru in his vegetative state. Rem rents a carriage and takes Subaru on a trip back to the mansion. By nightfall, she sets up camp in the mountains and lays Subaru to rest while she reflects on some things. She gets really happy to finally have Subaru to herself after all this while. The following day, she continues her journey with Subaru all the way to the mansion. However, on her way there, their carriages get attacked by the same occultic people from earlier. Rem unleashes her demonic powers to protect Subaru with her life, blocking and defending each and every attack the witch fiends throw towards her. Sadly for her, even she fails to keep them all at bay as she gets knocked out in an explosion. Subaru also passes out and wakes up a few hours later in a cave. There, he discovers the leader of the occultic group, Conti, who's also a world-class madman. He summons his people to the room and begins to rant about Subaru's actions and words. He blames him for all that's happened, including the massacre of his friends. After that, he begins to rant about a few more nonsensical words before sending his men to find the girl that came with Subaru, Akarem. After they're gone, he turns back to Subaru and continues asking him useless questions. Subaru keeps mute and stares into space. Still, Conti keeps displaying his madness. At one point, Subaru tries to mutter some words to Conti, but Conti talks down on his insanity, calling him a fake madman. Subaru's body gets more restive and he begins to cry and foam at the mouth. Conti picks him up and smashes his head against the wall. Seconds later, Rem arrives with her demon powers already activated. She takes down a few of the guards there and faces Conti. Conti makes fun of her and messes with Subaru's vegetative body. When he gets really pissed, he takes his fight with Rem for real and captures her. Before meting out his final judgment, he displays his madness for a few more minutes. Then, he uses his dark magic to twist Rem's limbs, angering Subaru in the process. All of a sudden, Subaru regains part of his strength as he begins acting rabid. Subaru's last screw loosens when Rem's half-alive body crawls gently towards him. Subaru regains his ability to speak and releases himself from the chains before holding Rem in his hands. In her final moments in life, Rem tells Subaru to make sure he survives. Subaru carries her lifeless body and leaves the cave for Emilia's town. On his way there, he keeps on saying the name of the evil witch who took his life away from him. When he's finally at the mansion, he kneels down in the snow and shouts his name one more time. Just then, a giant wildcat silhouette erupts from the mansion and orders Subaru to sleep alongside her daughter. Almost immediately, Subaru's head rolls off his body and he loses his life on his knees. In an instant, Subaru is revived again to see himself at the merchant's store. Rem arrives shortly to check up on him, and this time, Subaru holds her hand and walks with her, acting completely normal. Rem seems not to understand what is wrong with him, but she refuses to ask too many questions. Subaru, on the other hand, keeps the look of anger and vengeance on his face as he begins planning on how to take down the terrible Conti. Subaru takes Rem to Crush's mansion to ask for help in defeating the witch occultic group. At the entrance to the mansion, he finds Wilhelm, Crush's butler, talking with a renowned merchant named Russell Fellow. Subaru asks Wilhelm for a little information about him and Wilhelm explains all there is to know. After that, he arranges for Rem to meet Crush. After the meeting is set up, Subaru asks for Crush's help to take down the enemy cult before they massacre in a few days' time. Crush makes Subaru understand that if she helps Emilia's domain, then it would automatically disqualify Emilia from the royal selection candidacy. Subaru thinks long and hard about the consequences of his actions and still chooses to save Emilia and her people. Hoping Crush would grow a pair and help him out, Subaru actually gets very disappointed when Crush starts talking about unimportant things and completely ignoring how many lives are at stake should Subaru be right. Subaru still tries to make her see the light, but Crush stays in the dark hole she's kept herself in and refuses to help Subaru with his problem. Subaru bends down on his knees and begs Crush to help him with her military force. Still, Crush remains aloof and even throws him out after a little while. Before he leaves, Crush tells him that although she believes he's telling the truth, she still cannot help him as it won't benefit her in any way. Subaru takes his leave and heads over to the inn nearby to camp for the night. There, he discusses his strategy with Rem and thinks about Reinhard and the other noble humans who would help them out. Unfortunately for them, all the sensible knights were already off on one duty or the other, so Subaru decides to beg the other royals for help. The following day, he arrives at Priscilla's residence to ask her for help. Priscilla, the proud dummy, gets so full of herself that she agrees to help Subaru on the condition that he bows, grovels on the ground, and licks her feet. Subaru thinks about this for a little while and finally decides to do the impossible. Just as he's about to lick her feet, Priscilla stops him from doing so and kicks him off her house after calling him a lowlife and sorry excuse for a human. Al, her butler, takes Subaru out of Priscilla's mansion and drops him at the entrance. There, he apologizes for his master's terrible actions and wishes him a good day. Subaru heads into the town thinking of the best way to get an army to protect Emilia. Along the way, he's approached by someone else. This time, Hashin, one of the royal selection candidate's butlers. Mimi shows up and talks to him. Subaru smiles and follows Hashin to a restaurant to discuss. Thinking he could turn her on his side, Subaru actually gets the shock of his life as he finds out that Hashin actually set him up and left him for dead. Reality dawns on Subaru way too fast that he's not getting Hashin on his side anytime soon at all. Subaru gets really disappointed and shouts at Hashin for playing smart when there are actual people whose lives are at risk. Hoshin ignores Subaru and leaves the restaurant with her guards. Before leaving, however, she says a few things about negotiations to Subaru and tells him to get better next time. At this point, Subaru is way too disgusted at the people calling themselves acting rulers of the nation. He slams his hand on the table and waits for Rem to show up. When she does, she breaks the bad news to him, telling him just how adamant the knights were about her pleas. Subaru then concludes that no help is going to come from the capital. So, he decides to take matters into his own hands. He rents a carriage and starts traveling all the way to Emilia's domain so they can evacuate them before the witch dudes attack. On their way there, they find Otto and his buddies and camp for the night with them. While at the camp, Otto complains to Subaru about how bad things were for him. He has loads of oil to sell in town and is scared that he may never sell them all before they spoil. Subaru offers to buy all the oil right there on the condition that Otto and his people ride with him to Emilia's domain that night so they can complete the evacuation before it's too late. Naturally, Otto and his men begin the trip immediately. However, they run into something weird on the way as they approach the tallest tree in the entire kingdom. Subaru takes out his cell phone to check the map of their domain so they can get a shortcut. Just then, one of the people traveling alongside them disappears into thin air. Only Subaru notices his absence. He asks Otto for the location of his guy, but Otto immediately loses his memory in the short term. Just then, Subaru finds a large land whale by his side attacking them. Subaru is thrown into the air by the white whale. Thankfully, Rem was there to save him with her windbreak protection. Otto, on the other hand, keeps on riding his carriage like a madman. Anything to keep his carriage away from the deadly white whale. Subaru asks Rem if she could see the white whale pursuing them, but she tells him she can't see the whale as it is too dark. Rem thinks quickly and gets up at the front of the carriage to lighten their weight. The white whale keeps pursuing them everywhere. At one point, when all hope seems to be lost, Rem decides to sacrifice herself just to save Subaru and Otto from certain death. Subaru protests against this and tries to keep her from doing such a dangerous thing to herself. Sadly for him, Rem had already made up her mind. She puts him to sleep and jumps into the dark abyss behind them. Subaru wakes up a few minutes later and finds Rem absent. He asks Otto where Rem was and Otto tells him she had to sacrifice herself just so she could turn the whale away from them. Hearing this, Subaru asks Otto to turn the carriage back so they can go look for Rem. However, Otto isn't about to die a useless death over a bunch of people he doesn't even know. So, he makes sure Subaru doesn't get hold of the carriage so he can ride them to safety. Subaru keeps trying to reason with him, but Otto explains just how powerful the white desert whale is. They're no match for such a beast, so they shouldn't even try to face it. Still, Subaru tells him they can't abandon Rem and they have to get back so she lives. Just then, Otto forgets who Rem is. Subaru initially thinks Otto was kidding, so he punches him. However, when he sees that Otto has truly forgotten who Rem was, he clenches his fist and curls up in pain. Just then, the white whale attacks again, leaving Otto to believe there was still something on his carriage, causing the whale to come back. Subaru realizes the whale is a witch fiend who is coming after himself. On hearing this, Otto pushes Subaru away from the carriage and leaves him to the dangerous white whale. Subaru lies down on the ground completely still and waits for the white whale's attack. Suddenly, the white whale stops moving to attack Subaru. Subaru runs for dear life and crashes on another part of the plain field. Thankfully, the white whale gets tired of pursuing him and leaves him to the fate of the harsh meadows. Subaru collapses and wakes up a few minutes later. He walks a few meters forward and finds a land dragon waiting there for him. He rides this land dragon and manages to get to Emilia's domain by morning. On getting there, he collapses again and wakes up close to Rem. Thinking she was Rem, Subaru hugs her tightly. However, when he finds out it's Rem, he's disappointed yet again. Rem says a few derogatory things about Subaru and warns him never to touch her like that again. Subaru sighs and begins telling Rem's story and how she did. To his surprise, however, Rem couldn't remember her own sister, Rem. Subaru begins to think this was a side effect of being attacked by the whale. He gets up angrily from bed and walks over to what used to be Rem's room. Shockingly, he finds the room completely inhabited. Subaru plunges into even more depression as he begins to question his own reality. He leaves the room and moves on to find Emilia writing some stuff in her room. He enters without saying hi and tries to force Emilia into leaving her mansion for her own safety. Still, Emilia doesn't understand where Subaru is coming from. She keeps pushing Subaru again, asking him to tell her something so she can understand where he's coming from. Sadly for him, he couldn't tell her. It reached a stage where Subaru eventually was forced to say something. He damns the consequences and decides to spill out the truth about his return to death curse even if it ends his own life. Sadly for him, Emilia receives his punishment this time. Just as he's about to speak up, the witch miasma around him fondles Emilia's heart and stops it from beating. Suddenly, Emilia faints and starts bleeding from everywhere. Subaru screams and stays in that position for the entire day. By evening time, Betty comes by and dispels Puck from Emilia's chest crystal. Then, she asks Subaru to tell her his wish and Subaru asks her to kill him. Betty sighs and refuses to end his life. Instead, she opens a portal and throws him into it just so he can face his death somewhere else. Subaru, after entering the portal, lands in a forest and is surrounded by the witch cultists from earlier. Conti shows up with his madness and makes jest of Subaru's misfortune. After spouting his nonsense, he takes out his unseen hands and tries to steal Emilia from his hands. However, Subaru protects Emilia with all his might. Conti gets very pissed and tries to strangle Subaru while he gets to touch Emilia. Subaru screams with all his might for someone to come help him out. Just then, Puck appears and stops Conti from touching her daughter, Emilia. Subaru tries calling Puck by its full name but Puck shuts him up and tells him to focus on the enemy in front of him. By that time, Conti had already clamped around Puck with his unseen hands. Puck grows way bigger and pushes Conti's unseen hands away from itself. Subaru gets really shocked and asks Puck if it was really the one. Puck affirms his suspicions and turns to the madman Conti who is busily blaspheming against Puck. Puck gets tired of Conti's whining and then freezes him to death. Once Conti and his witches are gone, Puck turns to Subaru and tells him he has to die now that he's allowed Emilia to die. Subaru dies in agony as his entire body is frozen at temperatures below freezing point. Minutes before dying, Subaru laughs at himself and closes his eyes to death. His return to death curse is activated yet again and Subaru wakes up to see Rem near him at the town square. This time, Subaru refuses to make a fuss over anything. He just holds Rem in his hands and takes her to a balcony to discuss things with her. There, Subaru asks Rem to elope with him to the west, which is far away from their country. Rem gets very surprised and asks him why he would ask that of her out of the blue. Subaru tells her he's sick and tired of his situation and has gone through hell enough times to figure out that he's not meant to save or help anyone. He would rather just disappear and have nobody miss him than keep trying only for him to die at the end. Rem listens to all that he has to say. When he's done mentioning how useless and irritating he is, she tells him to stay there in the capital. Although Rem would rather elope and live with Subaru, the love of her life, for all her remaining years on Earth, she still feels that he would lose a part of him if she elopes with him. The part she fell in love with. As such, there's no way she would let that happen to him. Subaru has no choice but to stay and fight the misfortune he's so used to and become the hero that Rem fell in love with. Right after saying all those touching words to him, Rem confesses her love to Subaru. Subaru cries and tells Rem that he's gone through hell long enough for him to know when to give up. However, Rem stands strong and tells him it's okay to feel down at times and that he can always come back up to be the strong man she fell in love with. Concerning her love for him, Subaru breaks it to Rem that he's already in love with Emilia and not her. Rem handles the rejection like a champ and keeps herself calm. Subaru begs her to stay by his side as his right-hand woman and Rem agrees to do so, despite being rejected by him. She tells him that no matter how far he's fallen into darkness, she will always be there to bring him out of the deep hole he's in. Subaru asks her why she would go so far for someone like him. Rem tells him it's because he's her hero. Back when she almost lost herself to the monster residing inside her, Subaru was the person who came by and risked everything to protect her. Subaru opens his eyes wide and realizes that he may be the hero Rem was talking about. He takes one final look at himself and believes in himself again. Rem tells him to let them start from zero again. This time, they can truly be awesome together even if they can't be together. For the first time in the series, Subaru laughs out loud and is happy again. He hugs Rem tightly and promises to be the man she fell in love with once again. Hearing this, Rem bursts into tears as her happiness is reignited. After getting his affairs in order, Subaru decides to return to Crush to renegotiate an alliance between her camp and Emilia's on equal terms. In return, he provides Crush and her people with the White Whale's location. Earlier that day, Subaru had discussed this with Rem and they came up with a plan to force Crush to strike a deal with them. Crush, being the shrewd person she is, asks Subaru for some evidence to prove he really did know the location of the White Whale. Subaru smiles and brings out his cell phone. He claims that the cell phone is a magical device that could tell the exact time of the day that the White Whale comes out to find more victims. Hearing this, Wilhelm, Crush's butler, becomes emotional for a bit but he soon shrugs it off and apologizes for his incompetence. Soon, Hoisin and her butler enter to further support Subaru's claims about the location of the White Whale. They mention a few deals they would be making with Crush from their own end as well if she can strike one with Subaru. When they're all done talking, they fall silent to listen to what Crush has to say. Crush analyzes the air around Subaru for a few seconds and explains that although she has questions and doubts about their deal, she still chooses to trust Subaru's judgment on the entire matter. Subaru explains a few more things about Crush which makes her all the more impressed at Subaru's resilience and dedication. She fully supports the deal and they shake hands on it. After the officials are gone, Wilhelm bows his head to thank Subaru for helping them find the white whale. Confused, Subaru tries to find out why Wilhelm is so thankful for helping him. Wilhelm tells him that the witch fiend had killed his wife, the former sword saint, in a fierce battle ages ago. Subaru offers his appreciation for such an honor bestowed upon him and follows Crush to their base camp. There, he finds several soldiers there preparing themselves to bring down the white whale. From the looks of things, it seemed everyone had lost a person or two to that deadly witch fiend. The following day, Subaru is taken to the stables to choose a land dragon for himself to ride on. He checks out a few of them and finally finds one that resonates well with him before choosing it. After getting his choice of dragon, Subaru joins the other soldiers in the common room to discuss their next mission. There, he comes across the Iron Fang, a beastman with immense strength and prowess. Everyone hangs around and waits for all to be present before beginning their mission. Crush finds Subaru somewhere and asks him what he would do to help them bring the whale down. Subaru lets them know that although he can't fight, he does have a weird affinity for witch fiends, meaning the white whale is always attracted to him. So, he would distract the white whale and draw it to an open position so her people could take it down while it's vulnerable. As they discuss, Wilhelm's former warriors arrive and introduce themselves to Crush. They thank Subaru for helping them find the terrible whale and take their place to stand and wait for the announcement. When it seems like everyone's present, Crush gets on stage and offers a speech to ignite the warrior spirit in the fighters before they begin their mission. The speech works and everyone's juiced up with enough adrenaline to stand and fight the monster. In the next scene, Subaru and the other warriors hit the road to track the white whale down. On their way there, Subaru gets to discuss a few things with Mimi, Hashin's private bodyguard, and Ricardo, the beastman from earlier, who tells him about them meeting some thieves on the road to the white whale. By nightfall, Crush and the warriors set up camp under the Flugel tree, which was the largest tree in the country at the time. Moments before midnight, Subaru gets to talk to Rem one last time before fighting the whale. Rem lets him know that she knows he was lying about the cell phone thing, telling him the location of the white whale. Subaru tries to explain things to him, but she tells him not to worry too much, that it doesn't change a thing about how she feels about him. Subaru thanks her for understanding his place in the entire situation, and Rem tells him it's okay. After their discussion, the duo take a walk and find Wilhelm staring at a small shrub of flowers. They call his attention to their presence and have a little discussion with him. From his speech, they could figure out that Wilhelm really loved his wife. Wilhelm thanks Subaru for helping him find a chance to take down the stupid monster that brought down his wife. He also lets Subaru know that he will be visiting his wife's grave when the monster is finally brought down. A few hours after midnight at the witching hour, Crush and her warriors lie and wait for the white whale monster to finally come out. They wait for a few minutes and nothing happens. They begin to doubt Subaru's evidence, but just as they're about to lose hope, they find the silhouette of the white whale high in the sky as it glides towards them. When it gets close enough, Subaru and Rem slash its belly and force it back to the sky. Crush smiles at her chance and seizes it. She lets out a battle cry that urges her men to attack the white whale. Long ago, Wilhelm remembers his first meeting with his wife as a teenager. Back then, Teresa van Astria, the sword saint, was a beautiful young redhead lady who loved watching flowers. That day, Wilhelm remembers watching the flowers with her. As reality drifts back, Wilhelm's conviction to slay the beast called the white whale is much stronger. He comports himself and follows Crush's battle cry to bring down the white whale. After receiving the first few hits from the soldiers, the white whale wiggles its body around and roars out loud, hoping to convince the people to stop attacking it. Subaru and Rem exploit the whale's weakness and begin rushing, diverting its attention away from the army. Crush attacks it when the whale looks away and commands her warriors to attack the whale head-on. When the whale turns back to her, she orders her men to disperse. Wilhelm, on the other hand, transforms into serious mode and faces the whale in the eye. The whale also sees him and charges towards him. Wilhelm waits for the whale to be close enough before jumping high into the sky and slashing it up to pieces. Soon, other warriors, including Crush, join him to bring the whale down. They all unleash the most powerful spells in their arsenal, hoping to at least subdue the whale. Unfortunately, the white whale wasn't that easy to bring down as it maintained its altitude and prepared itself for a second strike. While Subaru and Rem discuss the best ways to bring the whale down, Ricardo and his men rush over to the monster to tear it into its ears and eyes. Felix and Subaru talk smack about themselves while Wilhelm keeps up with the attacks on the whale. At one point in their fight, Wilhelm cuts out one of the monster's eyes and holds it as his trophy. Thinking they've won, the white whale shocks the fighters as it morphs into its second, more monstrous form. It then releases its infamous elimination fog all around the plains and engulfs the warriors inside it. Wilhelm flashes back to a moment he once had with his wife back when they were younger before coming back to face the monster in front of them. Moments after the fog was formed, several other men admit to losing and forgetting several of their men to the fog whale. It was then that Subaru understood it all. The fog eliminates both the existence and memories of those trapped inside it. Crush splits her warriors into groups so they won't be attacked that easily by the whale. Before she finishes her order, screams from several dead souls emanate from all around them, and this causes those affected to almost lose their consciousness to death. Thankfully, not all are affected by the screams, so the ones that were immune are taken care of. Subaru, after taking care of a few men, decides to sacrifice himself just to buy time for Crush to take care of her injured. Crush tries to stop him, but Subaru gets on his land dragon and rides it with Rem away from their location. The white whale follows them as usual and tries to stop them from getting away. Wilhelm arrives just at the right time and stops the whale from harming Subaru and Rem. He punctures the whale's forehead and then one of the fins. Subaru and the others continue leading the whale away from the battlefield. They stop somewhere and wait for the whale's next attack. The whale's next attack comes from up top, and this traps Wilhelm. He stares at a dandelion flower in the middle of the desert and recalls one of the pivotal moments he had with the Sword Saint, Teresa. Back then, Wilhelm had just finished a battle and was about to be slain by the enemy. Luckily for him, he was saved by Teresa. The following day, young Wilhelm met and challenged Teresa for being the Sword Saint, all while being beautiful like that. Teresa knocks him out and tells him she herself never wanted to be the Sword Saint, but now she understands why she was chosen. At that instant, Wilhelm gets swallowed by the whale. Subaru opens his eyes wide in surprise as the whale takes Wilhelm away. However, what he didn't know was that the whale had already split itself into 3 equal parts. Crush and the others now face real despair as the enemy they were struggling to fight had just multiplied itself into 3. While the others stand and watch their deaths come to them, Subaru and Rem keep on fighting the whale doppelgangers. Rem activates her demon form and gets on the whale to attack it. Subaru keeps on running and running until Crush joins him to ask him what he thinks about the 3 whales. Subaru rethinks the whole situation and wonders what the mystery behind the doppelgangers may be. The whale keeps on coming after his witch miasma and Subaru continues evading it. At one point in the fight, the other warriors join the fight to buy Subaru some time to think of a way out. Subaru joins up with Mimi and hears from her that Ricardo the Beastman, who suffered heavy damage from one of the whale's attacks, was perfectly fine. This could only mean the whale was getting lighter and less powerful. While he connects the dots, the twins, Mimi and her brother, Hatero from Hashin's kingdom, both open a part in the whale's stomach. Wilhelm drags himself out of the whale's belly and falls down to the ground. Subaru and Crush rush towards him to confirm he's okay. Together, the duo finally reason out the logic behind the whale's metamorphosis. Apparently, the real whale sent 2 of the doppelgangers to fight the warriors while it glided above the sky. Realizing this, Crush bumps fists with Subaru and decides to go with his plan to bring down the alpha whale. By that time, the 2 fake whales were on their way to attack the hopeless men. Crush intercepts them and reignites the warrior spirit in her fighters' hearts. She makes them understand that if Subaru, the weakest man in their team, didn't give up, they shouldn't either. Hearing this, the entire army gets stronger and sheaths their sword to fight the 2 whales. In the meantime, Subaru and Rem go for the mother whale to bring it down. Subaru eats himself up into the air and lands on the mother whale just to taunt it. When he's gotten its attention, he falls down and says a few more words that strengthen the witch miasma around him. The mother whale begins to follow him down, but little did it know it was falling into Subaru's trap. Rem catches her lover mid-air and pierces the whale's mouth with her magic spell. The whale gets knocked out and glides down to the earth. Crush and her team then fire several magic attacks towards the flugel tree, which in turn falls on the mother whale and takes it out. Wilhelm, knowing fully well the whale is in its final moments of life, takes out his sword and slashes several parts of the whale's body while remembering the day he got married to his late wife as a teenager. In a fit of silent rage, Wilhelm calls out his wife's name and puts the whale to eternal sleep. Then, he looks up into the sky and calls his wife's name one more time before confessing his undying love for her. At that moment, Crush declares the war on the white whale officially over. After the victory cry, Subaru stands on one part of the plains to look at the rising sun. Crush approaches him and tenders her undying gratitude to him for helping her bring down the terrible whale that has plagued their lands for 4 whole centuries. Subaru gets flustered and mentions to her that he really didn't do much. Crush makes him know she would be honored to have him in her arms as her personal advisor or something. Unfortunately, Subaru's heart is already with someone else, and that's Emilia and Rem. Nonetheless, he wishes Crush a speedy recovery with her men and promises to keep up his end of the deal in their alliance. Crush smiles and shakes hands with Subaru before taking her leave to treat her men and the carcass of the great white whale. Before she leaves, however, Wilhelm shows up and offers his undying loyalty to Subaru. Subaru congratulates Wilhelm for finally fulfilling his wish in life and dismisses him to live his life. Crush then offers Felix and half of her soldiers to Subaru as her thanks for helping her out. Subaru accepts the gift and returns to Rem, who is worried sick about him. He thanks her for staying by his side even when he was at his lowest and promises to stay by her side till eternity. With tears in her eyes, Rem thanks Subaru and hugs him. After his meeting with Rem, Subaru joins Ricardo and Mimi alongside some of his new warriors to discuss with them. Ricardo offers his undying loyalty to Subaru and offers to fight with him when it's time to take on the witch cult. At that point, half of Ricardo's mercenary team shows up, but the only problem Subaru has now is that they're led by Julius, the man who disgraced him back in one of his time leaps. Julius and his group of mercenaries alight their horses after getting close enough to Subaru and his own people. Subaru initially shows off a passive-aggressive vibe, but he soon grows up and keeps his stance. At the end of their conversation, he laughs with Julius and forgets old wounds. Following the necessary introductions, everybody gathers around for a meeting to discuss taking out the witch cult. Subaru sits in the midst of all of them and explains all the little details he's learnt from his past time leaps to the people so they can make calculative decisions before launching their attack. After hearing all he had to say, the people questioned Subaru on some of his theories just to find out how credible it was. Subaru quells their concerns by giving them more proof of his words. On their way to Emilia's domain, Julius and Subaru ride and talk together about their previous banter in the arena. Subaru mentions that he was a little immature to have fought him back then like he was a real knight. Julius tells him it's okay to be like that sometimes. In the end, the two kiss and become frenemies. By nightfall, an exhausted Emilia sits by her bed and keeps worrying about her life and domain. She complains to Puck about the people not believing her warnings about the witch cult and just wishes they would at least listen to her. Somewhere in the witch forest, Subaru trespasses into the witch cult territory and taunts them into appearing to see him. He mutters a few words to the servants and makes his way towards Conti's hideout. There, he finds Conti displaying his madness as usual and approaches him. When Conti notices him, he asks Subaru if he is the archbishop of one of the 7 deadly sins, pride. Conti then takes out the witch's holy book to check for a prophecy talking about Subaru. When he doesn't find it, he begins to question Subaru's real identity. Subaru immediately pretends to be interested in whatever Conti is saying. Unfortunately, Conti could see through his disguise. He takes out his unseen hands and attacks Subaru with murderous intent. Just then, Mimi and her brother, Hitaro, attack Conti and stop him from harming Subaru. Conti stops attacking and displays a little more madness. Subaru gets tired of his whining and orders Wilhelm to do his thing. Almost immediately, Wilhelm cuts Conti in half with his sword and it's over in a second. Subaru apologizes for making Wilhelm cut an enemy in half, but Wilhelm tells him not to worry at all. Almost immediately, Mimi and her brother began rummaging through Conti's body. They find his gospel book there and throw it away. Subaru picks it up and reads the content of the book, asking what it means for someone to carry it. Wilhelm answers him, saying that the book is proof of someone's involvement in the witch's cult. They then discuss a little more about Conti's infamous fingers and all that. They take their leave a few minutes later, but Subaru asks them to make sure Conti is fully dead so they don't make any mistakes. After blowing him up, they stop by and make jokes over a job well done. Subaru stops to think about something that didn't add up. Just then, Conti's unseen hands attack all of them from behind. The surprise attack takes down about 5 members of their army before they find them out. Following that attack, the unseen hands sneak up behind Subaru and drag him deep into the forest. The hands get stuck in a tree and the controller shows up. Subaru takes a good look at his face and finds out this person calls himself Conti's finger. The finger keeps whining about a missing gospel book and blames Subaru for stealing it. He keeps shouting and shouting until a weird bright orb floats towards him and brings him down. The finger gets very restive and complains about the spirit orb coming to attack him. Soon enough, Wilhelm shows up and slices into the finger to end its life. When the others gather, they all wonder how the hell it was possible for another Archbishop of Sloth to be alive. Subaru returns to their base and beats himself up for letting the soldiers die. He almost gives up on his dream to fight Conti. Thankfully, Wilhelm was there to remind him how strong he has to be for the people he's sworn to protect. Subaru gets his inspiration again and urges his people to keep riding to their carriage towards Emilia's location. On their way there, Felix approaches Subaru and tells him to iron things out fully with Julius, as she suspects that he still has some sort of resentment against him. As Subaru rides towards Julius to talk, he and the others are placed under a bewitchment spell by Ram, who thought they were Emilia's enemies. Subaru finds himself in the bewitchment spell and keeps calling for anyone to come help him out. When he gets off his land dragon, some poisonous vines attack him. Subaru struggles to free himself from the vine's clutch. Then, he realizes that this can't be real and he's probably in a bewitchment spell of some sort. Luckily for him, the spirit orb was there to bring him back to normal. Subaru wakes up to reality and finds Julius near him. Once he gets up, he finds several others under the same spell. Julius brings out some more spirit orbs and fuses them with Subaru so he can help them out of their bewitchment spells. Subaru comes under pressure from having so many thoughts fill his head at once. Eventually, the guys snap out of it and Ram shows herself to them. Wilhelm immediately tracks her down and holds her at sword point. Ram calms down and accuses Subaru of rebelling against Emilia despite her kind acts towards him. Subaru proves to her that he's still Emilia's dog, so she shouldn't worry too much about him betraying her. Ram then tells him he sent Emilia a blank letter a few weeks ago, but Subaru tells her it's all a mistake from the mailing company or something. Ram reasons with his thoughts and allows him to pass through to Emilia's village. There, Subaru tries his best to convince the adamant villagers to leave the village before the witch cultists show up to attack them. The villagers are understandably skeptical of Subaru's claims as they're scared of Emilia herself. Subaru doubts himself for a second, but Felix quickly taps his back and urges him to be more outspoken. Suddenly, Subaru musters up the courage and convinces the people to change their perspective and listen to him for once. After the speech, Petra comes by to tell Subaru that Emilia had previously come to warn the villagers the previous day. Due to her half-elf nature, the villagers ignored her and she was sent back. That didn't stop the young lady, as she made sure to reinforce the forest barriers so the cultists would find it hard to enter the village. Subaru meets up with Julius and discusses the mechanism behind his infamous spirit orbs. Julius tells him he uses the spirit orbs to break out of illusionary spells and also to keep his wits about him. Subaru patches things up with Julius fully and returns to see Felix, who is sitting inside a carriage. There, they discuss the owner of the carriage, a very shrewd business merchant. Felix gets herself very close to him and knocks him out. When he's fully down, she reveals his true identity as a spy in the village for the witch cultists. Sadly, it was already too late, as the spy smiled and blew himself up. Felix and Subaru wake up shortly and they're all right. Unfortunately, the village wasn't all right, as the witch cultists were already everywhere. They attack and kill off all the villagers they could find. Wilhelm and the other warriors tried their best to keep the cultists at bay, but it still wasn't enough. At one point in the battle, Wilhelm stabs one of Conti's fingers, but then he blows up and takes Wilhelm down with him. Thankfully, Wilhelm is okay, as he didn't incur any fatal injuries. The second finger shows up minutes later and displays more madness. Subaru gets sick of them and shows her the gospel book he got from Conti. The finger displays even more madness and takes out her unseen hands to fight Subaru. Subaru draws the lady's attention away from the village and leads her into the forest nearby. There, he traps the finger and allows the witch fiends there to take her down. Then, he returns to the village only to find it in more chaos than normal. Subaru gets very pissed at the villains and gets himself ready to take them down by all means. Just then, Emilia arrives to protect her own village. Initially, Subaru was going to help out, but Felix advised him to keep it on a low. Subaru sits by and watches Emilia and Puck pummel the cultists to the ground. By that time, the other warriors have finished defeating the fingers and claimed victory to be theirs. Subaru freezes in his steps until he's given a little nudge forward to go meet Emilia. As he walks a few steps forward, he feels something very weird happening in his belly. Subaru knows what's about to happen, so he runs into the village before he's fully possessed by Conti's spirit. Felix and Julius catch up to him and find him raving mad like the rabies-infected Conti. Subaru's consciousness fights hard to keep his body intact, but Conti's spirit is just too strong for him. When it comes down to it, Subaru begs Julius to end his life before Conti completely takes over his body. Julius hesitates to do so, but then Subaru faces Felix and asks him to do it. Felix steps forward and ends Subaru's life on the spot. Julius delivers the final blow and sends Subaru back to his last save point. This time, Subaru revives in his most recent save point, which is on the plains back when he and his people were discussing taking down the witch cultists. He keeps himself calm and uses the information he's learnt later that day to formulate a much better plan to take down the cultists. Along the line, Subaru explains to his people about the new power Conti used on him, the power to possess people's bodies and make them do his will. Julius gives a little insight into the kind of magic that Conti could be using to create his so-called fingers. So, to stop him from reviving himself, they have to destroy all the spare bodies Conti had around so his soul would have nowhere to go. Before ending the meeting, Subaru tells the crowd that he may be possessed somewhere along the line, so they should try to put that in mind before attacking the fiends. In the next scene, Emilia wakes up by dawn after having a nightmare. She finds Puck by her side and explains her woes to her. Puck gives her a few ideas on doing what she wants instead of trying to please the people who don't give a damn about her. Emilia sighs, changes her clothes and gets down to meet Ram and her new guest. There, Wilhelm introduces himself to Emilia and explains their mission in their village. Wilhelm tells Emilia to evacuate her village before the cultists attack and take them away. Emilia is shocked as she would never believe her village would fall under such a terrible fate. Wilhelm and Ram manage to convince her to let her people escape the village. Emilia stops a little to point out something strange about the whole arrangement. However, she's interrupted by someone else, a disguised Subaru who rushes in to inform Emilia of the attacking enemy. Emilia stops and forgets what she's saying and asks Wilhelm if they'd already gotten the approval of the villagers. Wilhelm and Subaru tell her they've already spoken to the villagers, so there's no problem. Puck tells her it's okay to leave the mansion to Betty as she's contracted to stay there. Following their meeting, Emilia heads into the village and finds the children playing around there. The children spot her and flock around the beautiful Emilia to talk to her. Emilia tries to push them away, but Subaru urges her to embrace her inner elf and ride with them during the evacuation. Subaru kneels in front of the kids and asks them to say a little about Emilia and her elf status. The children say a lot of good things about Emilia, and this warms her heart well enough for her to open up to the kids. Subaru leaves shortly and finds the spy from his previous time leap in the forest preparing their ambush on the village. Subaru and the warriors catch up to them first and figure out Conti's location so they can attack first. But first, they have to finish the entire evacuation before it's too late. Subaru and the others return to the village to get everybody out of there. When they're done, Subaru rallies up all the warriors under his command and heads to Conti's location. Once he gets his meeting with him, Subaru waits for Conti to display his normal mad self to everyone there. Then, he speaks a few comforting words to Conti to keep him distracted and unaware of what's coming his way. Conti falls for this and even hugs Subaru, calling him the witch's vessel. Subaru, however, changes his countenance once Conti speaks ill of Emilia. Then, he opens a magic mirror and shines it at Conti's eyes. Felix appears on the other side to say hi and spook Subaru. Subaru smiles and reveals his true self to Conti before boarding his land dragon to Bale. He leads the witch cultists into the traps he and his people laid all across the land and pummels the cultists when they get there. Mimi and Hentaro join Subaru in the pursuit until they reach the ambush point a few meters into the forest. When they get there, Subaru gets off his mount and finally faces Conti. Julius also shows up to face the terrible Conti. Then, Julius and Subaru both join hands to bring down Conti. Subaru finally places all his trust in Julius and asks him to put an end to the devil known as Conti. Conti displays his final fit of madness, and then Julius uses the Al Christa spell with his holy sword to cut the unseen hands. As Conti wallows in more despair, Subaru cuts the unseen hands and subdues Conti for a short period. Meanwhile, Wilhelm meets with Emilia back in her carriage as she waits with the children for orders from her people. Wilhelm tells her he has to go out to check something out, so she should wait for him to get back before moving. Emilia nods in agreement and Wilhelm takes his leave. Subaru and Julius keep fighting the crazy Conti, who doesn't seem to be giving up anytime soon. The fight drags on for so long that Julius gets pissed and decides to give it his all. At one point in the fight, Conti encloses himself in assist as Julius is charging towards him. Subaru quickly takes out his spirit orb and throws it at the cyst to destroy it and expose Conti to Julius's sword. Julius thrusts his sword into Conti to take him out. Just as he's about to die, Conti transfers his consciousness to Subaru's body. Subaru quickly notices the change in his body and asks Julius to release the spell he put on his body. After the spell is taken off, Subaru shows Conti's consciousness of the witch's miasma residing inside his body. The witch's silhouette materializes in front of Conti's consciousness and pushes him out after realizing he's not the one she was after. As soon as Conti's consciousness gets back to his body, Julius finishes him off. Subaru picks up the Gospel of Conti and returns to the village. There, they discuss a few more incriminating things they found on Ketty's carriage. Felix tells Subaru and Otto that the firestones from their store are missing and are suspected to be on Emilia's carriage. This could only mean someone planted them there to be activated when they get to the right place. Hearing this, Subaru borrows Otto and his land dragon so he can get to Emilia's carriage before it's too late. Otto proposes a trade to let their work be easier, and Subaru follows suit. Otto uses his special ability, which gives him the ability to hear animals, to get the shortest route to catch up to Emilia. They both pass through a terrible path that keeps on going and going until Otto notices something weird. He senses something weird following them as the birds and trees begin screaming in silence. Just then, Conti shows up as a monster and pursues Subaru so he can get to know the witch more. At that moment, Emilia gets informed by Puck about the situation on the plains. It turns out Wilhelm and the others were busy fighting the cultists up front. She also warns Emilia to keep herself together and that help will be coming very soon. At one point in their trip, the children get very scared and spill out the beans to Emilia. Apparently, Subaru had told her never to leave Emilia's side so she doesn't get lonely at all. Emilia opens her eyes and realizes that Subaru really did care about her. Subaru, on the other hand, keeps trying to find a way to take down Conti that was still after him. As they leave the forest, Conti nears their carriage and throws his unseen hands at Subaru. Subaru sees through his trick and uses one of his Julius's spirit orb to create a magic spell that burns Conti's face. Then, he throws Conti's holy book at him and punches his face. Conti struggles a little further only to lose his touch on life a few seconds later. At that point, Subaru passes Wilhelm and the others and finds them fighting the other cultists. He says hi and passes them by. A few minutes later, when he's close to Emilia's carriage, Subaru clenches his fist and promises to save Emilia himself. Emilia, however, was busy thinking about why Subaru would do such a thing for her village and her. Just then, her carriage stops and Subaru arrives. He refuses to say a word to Emilia, who keeps watching in sheer shock and just rushes over to tear the firestones away from the carriage. Emilia finally asks him why he helps her so much. Subaru smiles and tells her it's because he loves her dearly. Then, he takes the firestones to a large rock near the flugel tree and leaves it there to blow up in smithereens. Sadly for Subaru, he wasn't able to get out in time before the explosion hit him completely. Emilia gets off her carriage and finds Subaru down and out on the plain field. She rushes towards him and puts his head on her lap. Subaru wakes up in an hour and finds himself in heaven, at Emilia's lap. He initially thinks he's dreaming and even teases Emilia about it. Emilia, however, tells him he's still on Earth and he's just fine. Subaru asks for an update on the whole fight with the witch cult and Emilia tells him it's all over. She did mention how shocked she was to find Subaru fighting side by side with Julius. Subaru tells her that he's already matured so there's nothing to worry about. Moving on, Emilia thanks Subaru for always coming to save her anytime she was in trouble. She asks him one more time why he's always so quick to save her. Subaru tells Emilia that it's because he loves her. Emilia tries naming all the things wrong with her, but Subaru tells her he doesn't care about such a thing. He will always love Emilia nonetheless. Emilia starts shedding tears as she finally holds Subaru's hands to love him with all her heart. Subaru promises to walk by her side and be there for her all day every day till she dies.